What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Rated G podcast. I'm your host, G. Derrado. For those of you who are new here, welcome to the show. I am a visual artist, illustrator, content creator, and here on the podcast, I like to sit down and talk about all things related to art and creativity, events and happenings related to the art and entertainment industries. And I frequently feature other artists, creatives, small business owners, and I like to sit down with them to get to know them better, as well as trying to help promote their brand. So if this is like the type of content you enjoy, please hit that like button. Actually, follow if you're listening, subscribe if you're watching, hit the like button, leave any comments, share with your friends, and especially hit that notification bell. That way you can keep up with the new uploads. And don't forget to visit the links down below where I provide all social media links, main websites, online shops, all that good jazz. And yeah, let's go. I feel like that might have been one of the quickest intros.
Yes.
Joining me for the first time, a new friend that I'm very fortunate to have met last summer, if my memory serves me right. This is also my first tarot reader on the podcast, so this is very exciting because just living here for a few years, I've noticed there are a lot of tarot readers, so I'm very much interested in just getting into the whole just that as a career path. So please welcome for the first time my good friend Sawyer, aka Irish Wake Tarot.
Thank you, my dude. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I can't believe it's been a year already, too. That's weird to think about, but that tracks because it was around May. And I think that was my first ever market, too, if I'm not mistaken. I haven't been doing them all that long. I got thrown into this pretty quickly within the last few years. I've just been branching out and figuring out what the hell I'm doing with all this stuff.
Well, that makes this conversational interview more exciting because I very much enjoy featuring all sorts of artists and creatives, regardless of where they're at in their career, whether they're just starting or perhaps they've had experience in doing, pursuing their dreams. So I the whole thing about this podcast is really picking the brains of my guests just to see their perspectives, the things they've experienced, especially throughout their, chosen career path. So, yeah, well, I guess a great way to get started is just sharing a little bit about yourself for the audience and like how you got into the tarot reading as well.
Cool. Yeah, no, absolutely. Again, like you said, my name is Sawyer. I like to pretend I'm a Richmond native, but I'm secretly from Northern Virginia.
Okay.
So it's funny because me and my buddy, we go to a lot of the local wrestling events and we've been like pushing the rivalries between Nova and Richmond while we're like secretly tugging our collars that we're not actually Richmond folk, but we've just been here long enough. It's certainly home to us at this point. But yeah, I'm from up in like the Northern Virginia area, Ashburn, Virginia, which went from being like dirt roads back in the day to Pleasantville now. And now I don't even recognize my own neighborhood anymore. But yeah, I have a theater background, which a lot of people say that kind of shines through in a lot of the things I do. And I've always just kind of had a passion for sort of performance. But I've always liked to, like a lot of artists, feel that on that personal level, and I like writing. I've dabbled in stand-up. Acting was great, but I hate auditioning. I know that's like the biggest crux to get over, but my like performance anxiety in my stomach is like in knots when it comes to auditioning and things. And so really it was maybe roughly about 3 years ago now at this point. But I was going through kind of like a terrible depression and things. Didn't know what I was doing, where I was going. I lost a job of mine that was very important. Had a girl kind of break my heart too, if I can be totally honest about that. I won't air all the laundry there. Had a lot of friends, but it was all kind of tied into a lot of these things here. And, it was kind of an eye opener that I don't really like the corporate world. And I know a lot of people say that and say, what can you do? And it's really hard. And no offense to people that do it and get their money and take their own. I don't feel like I'm bloodthirsty enough for it. I think you see a lot of people's unfortunate, like, true colors in these atmospheres and things. And I do make mistakes myself, and I feel like it's very Lovecraftian in a way. I feel like you kind of get brought into the fold with it because everybody starts to act a certain way, so you kind of stop recognizing yourself, and it's kind of a like who, what, where, when, why thing. But my neighbor, she had a tarot deck, and specifically it was kind of this one we mostly got started on. It's my Saints and Mystics deck. So when people ask if I kind of have a favorite, I say this is the one I kind of got started on, and it's very, very different than a lot of your traditional tarot. And believe it or not, I'm kind of like agnostic to like Christianity and things. I was raised Catholic, have some sort of internal things I'll keep to myself out of respect for family and things like that too.
Okay.
Just really, again, not really for me, but I love the spiritual side of it. And a friend of mine, she was like, man, how do you know a lot of these like figures on these cards? It's like, oh, I went to like 12 years of Catholic school. I was like, some of these are like pretty obvious, like King Solomon's in there. You have like Saint Teresa, there's like Saint Lucy, Saint Joseph, a lot of those. I was like, I grew up with that stuff. So it was a way of kind of tapping back into a spirituality I hadn't seen in a long time. And I even like to refer to my Saints and Mystics deck as my spiritual drinking buddies. So if you want something very different from tarot, but you kind of whether it's the placebo effect or you'd like an actual spiritual kind of drinking buddy, as it were, in your corner there, it's kind of nice to know that something's out there. That's the whole reason, a lot of people pray and turn to spirituality, is
Mhm.
just knowing, whether it's just going to have that, again, placebo effect, or that really like, hey, I feel like something's here. I feel like something's with me. I feel like this is important. And so it kind of helped me get back on track. I eventually branched out into, a lot of standard tarot and things. And now I'm grabbing every deck I can. People say once you start getting them, you get a little addicted. And you're supposed to have your first tarot deck gifted to you. So my neighbors, as a housewarming gift, actually got that to me as I moved away. And still kind of figuring things out, but tarot's been kind of a growing enterprise, and it brings me a lot of hope and satisfaction. So I like to pay that forward to other people. But been roughly doing it about 3 years now, and got kicked off at the Poe Museum. You can catch me at most of the unhappy hours. I'm going to be off for the next two, but I'll be picking that up in August. But you guys should go anyways. I'll be at there as an attendee. Last Thursday of every month, miserable time from 6 to 9 at the Poe Museum. So that's where I kind of got my working for tips and donations. And then
Yeah.
about a year or so, I was like, well, let's branch out to markets and parties and all this other stuff. So kind of figuring it out from there. But that's kind of the abridged version of my history here.
Okay. That's what's up. Yeah, kind of so the perform I was gonna say because like the sort of performance aspect, although it didn't really come off performative, but I can almost see how your background in theater kind of plays into all of this. I mean, I can't really articulate it well at the moment, but like when you did my reading for the first time, yeah, like I'm not saying like it was performant, but there was some, I don't know, I feel like there's an element from your theater background that plays
Mhm.
into you being able to um
It's part of
show.
it. If I can help you out, I won't be offended if you consider part of it
Well, it's
performance,
just
because
you
again,
just felt.
there is a theatrics to it, you know?
Well, maybe that's it. Maybe just the way you did the reading process, like you just felt very personable with me, um, like you were able to level with me and just be like, this is how it is and whatnot. Like it just I felt very connected with you in that way. So I would think that maybe coming from your background in theater and and I was, my family also grew up, very Catholic. So I didn't have like a heavy upbringing in it. Just 'cause I'm thinking because I'm the youngest out of four, but we
Okay.
very much have like we had a strong Catholic presence in our household.
I'm the
Uh,
second of five, by the way, so I know the big family struggle there
yeah,
too.
yeah, and they probably, I would go to Sunday morning church every now and then, but I feel like by that time they're kind of like, it's like, oh, it's our fourth one. Like it's just, yeah, they're tired. Um,
It's a lot.
uh,
Yeah.
but but the thing you were saying about, sort of like the placebo, because like I don't, I don't really say I believe in God. Like I always just say, I believe in
Mhm.
I do believe in a higher being, like an entity. I, in very, very hard times, I find myself kind of praying to
Mhm.
something, someone. So that's why, like, if the topic of religion comes up, like I don't say I'm religious, but I'll admit there are like some moments where I'm like, please God, like hear me out.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah,
Well, I
so
never really got the whole like I'm not religious but spiritual thing too. And it's kind of like, no, I mean, it makes sense, which in and of itself, that can still be your religion, your
yeah,
faiths, your beliefs, you don't have to have like all these doctrines and rule sets. And that's why I kind of respect a lot of like the non-denominational Christians or a lot of non-denominational faiths and things like that, where they're like, no, I kind of enjoy the practice, the level of communication and things that come with it, but I'm not, it's kind of like joining a fraternity or a sorority. You're like, I'm not here to,
yeah,
I'm not here to pay my dues. I'm not going to tolerate things that I don't stand for personally. And
right,
and I think at the end of the day, it is a personal journey, and I think, if you want to be a polytheist or a monotheist and believe in one divinity. And the thing is, because I love like the culture and the folklore and, pardon the term, even the mythology that comes with a lot of these things. So it's like I'm here for all of that because those in my mind are parables. There's life lessons, there's things. But at the end of the day, I kind of hang my head on hat on the agnostic hook. It's just that idea where it's like I'm open to things. I'm right there with you if I feel like I need to pray for things, because I think it's important to reach out, put out a distress call, if you will, see who's listening,
yeah,
see what's going on there,
right,
while also recognizing it can't necessarily all do things for you, and you can depend on yourself to some degree. So kind
right.
of splitting the difference and leaving myself open to whatever's out there.
Okay, so is that's what agnostic means? Is kind of like,
Yeah, yeah. It's
okay, I
funny. I
never
throw
knew
that
that.
word around a lot. And I'm like, because I grew up, in a very religious upbringing, I can't assume
Okay,
everybody knows this stuff. And I could be wrong. I could, you could get in your comments section like, this guy's way off base with what he's talking about. But and they kind of
uh,
joke on community that yeah, for real. Don't at me, guys. Don't at me.
yeah.
um,
Well, yeah, I didn't know that's what that. Yeah, yeah, my catchphrase on the podcast is I'm bad at words because I misuse words all the time, and there's a lot of simple words that are big words to me. So it's just like
yeah.
agnostic. Oh, okay. I mean, I don't even know what that is, but I mean, just
But
basing
in
what.
tarot, we'd call that like the fool card energy, which there's nothing wrong with that because the fool is not afraid to ask questions. And that's not an insulting thing. People roll their eyes at that card, but I was like, no, the fool has the courage to admit their ignorance, or willingness to
Oh,
learn what these words mean and things.
yeah,
Same with
I'm
the
a fool.
page, particularly the page of swords. They're a student, they admit they don't know everything, so they want to hear these things out.
So I'm a fool with the sword.
Yeah, nothing wrong with
No,
that.
I'm just
Hey,
saying, like
Frodo,
that's what
if
I
it
would
makes
do.
you feel better, Frodo's the fool in my Lord of the Rings deck. So ain't nothing wrong
Well,
with that. And he's a fool with the sword indeed.
well, yeah, no, yeah, that's, I mean, yeah, that's me saying, yeah, for sure feel like I'm the fool with the sword because I always open to admitting my faults and not
Mhm.
being, you know, just not being fully aware or, of certain things. So like, it's like, yeah, I fuck up and yeah, I might not know what I'm talking about, until I learn.
Yeah, no, and you got to be able to laugh at yourself. But
Oh
the cool
yeah,
thing is that fool, he keeps on, he gets back up and keeps going. And
yeah.
honestly, some people honestly would there's that quote they had it on The Simpsons. I can't remember who had said it too. It's like someone rather remain silent than Oh shoot, I'm blanking on this. This is why I shouldn't throw out quotes there that I can't finish on. Whether than like make themselves a fool or something. And it's funny because Homer goes into panic and he's like, "Ooh, I better say something so I don't sound foolish."
Oh
And it's
man.
just kind of the principle of it all. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's important to kind of open yourselves up to these things, especially because people are very wary about tarot itself. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't know if I want my future told. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't want spirits and demons and things. And I definitely don't feel like I'm trying to bring those energies into it. If that's the way people want to go about tarot and see it, and that's fine. And I'm not gonna lie, there have been some spooky moments. So I was like, oh wow, that's a little on the nose, but that's
Mhm.
just kind of where it is.
Yeah.
But I like to take a true psychological approach with it at the end of the day. And I've discussed this many a times with my therapist. It was funny. I think it was our second or first session. He was like, I had more questions, but I want to actually talk more about that tarot because he found it utterly fascinating because he himself
Oh,
is pretty spiritual. And I definitely like to look at it like a thought experiment. This is why people say it's kind of guiding your intuitions and things because it is like an ink blot test. You'll see what you really truly need to see, not even necessarily what you want to see, but what you need to see in a lot of these
hmm.
situations of it coming to light on there. And so literally putting these things out is it becomes that it's a thought experiment of just like, oh, what if I looked at it from this perspective? What if I looked at it from a celebratory, an optimistic thing, or what's the path to success? How do I get there? And it seems really cheesy, but we do kind of create our own future because there's way too many factors out of our control to truly predict it. But we can put our best chance for success or at least serendipity out there to have
Yeah.
these things happen. And so that's why, I kind of am agnostic to the whole thing because there's lots of weird stuff out there and they say magic is just science, to be explained yet.
Mm.
It still
Yeah.
has to go through that process of discovering and you never know because it's a big universe out there and who knows what's beyond us. But in the meantime, we're doing our best to work on our own spirituality and figure out the best paths for ourselves.
Absolutely. And speaking from my experience with you, like, yeah, there were a lot of things, from the cards that I was pulling, and I was like, yeah, this is hitting pretty. I was like, this is cutting pretty deep, because that was, you were with me there. I was certainly going through uh very tough times earlier this year, but a lot of light had came out of it. You were one of them. You came through.
Thank you.
But yeah, that experience really helped show a lot um, in terms of where I was and sort of what were some of the necessary things, the internal work that had to be done. And
Mhm.
I like to, yeah, I like to believe that you know, that assisted in just kind of bringing me out of the shit. Honestly, like
Mhm.
I do feel like
Absolutely.
definitely feel, I'm in a good place. I found the right people to keep in my life. And yeah, so I mean, yeah, the just the tarot reading, it, it's a wonderful thing. So if I ever, I'll say it right now, if anyone tuning in that may be a skeptic that's never tried it, I would give it a shot. I would give it a shot because sometimes you just never know. They might just turn
Mhm.
after an experience, right? But I will also say, being a transport, I've noticed a strong presence and tarot reading because I've seen a fair share of other readers, at these local events and stuff. So I was like, oh, like this is interesting because
Mhm.
from where I'm from and having done had a plenty of experience like doing events. Um, I can't really pinpoint where I've seen tarot readers at events. So coming down here, I'm like, oh yeah, like almost every other event I do, there's at least one or maybe even two tarot readers
Mhm.
present. So it's like, oh, okay, like I guess the general community is, perhaps they're really into it, they indulge in it. So it's a
Definitely.
yeah.
Well,
Um,
and it's an art form in and of itself too, because
mhm.
that's the beauty of tarot. I have like a bunch of YouTube channels that I follow because I kind of do it, daily with a lot of that stuff. And it's funny because my dad always adhered to the Michael Jordan principle. It's like if you want to be the best and if you really want to make it your career and your living, you got to be practicing it like every single
Oh yeah.
day. And even some of my biggest passions, my writing, my comedy, my acting, even a lot of that stuff, I was like, no, I don't have the energy for it every day. This I even at least do for myself, every single day as much
Yeah.
as I can and work on it and evaluate it too. And because like any song or movie or art piece, the more you can examine it, the more you learn and uncover these things. And that's why you have
Mhm.
different decks, because it brings in like new perspective. And I love that it's just kind of tapping into all of the possibilities, these things, because they're flexible, it's pliable, and it's about making it as applicable to you as possible
Mhm.
there. And sometimes even a little reverse psychology. Sometimes the cards are showing you what you don't want to see. And it might be that
Mhm.
idea. It's kind of like flipping a coin to make a decision. And this is what I tell people all the time. If it lands on heads and you're like, no, I feel really strongly about tails in my gut, then maybe the universe is calling your bluff. Maybe they're like, fine, then give up on it. And you're like, no, I won't give up. I am going to see this.
Yeah.
It's that nice kind of optimism that comes through a little bit of reverse psychology. And that's also hangman energy too, just looking at
Mhm.
things through like a different perspective, flipping things upside down a little bit there too. Um,
Yeah.
and I'll also add, you mentioned that kind of struggle that you went through, and I went through one myself that brought me here to this. It challenged my
Mhm.
art and my thinking in a way I never would have expected, and that in of itself is a tower moment. It's a disaster and it's a shock and a surprise. And when people ask if there's a bad card, I was like, there's some that are some harder pills to swallow, but it is followed always by the star card, and the idea is that whether you like it or not, it is taking you out of a false tower, a
Mhm.
world that you've built that seems safe and secure and good, but might not be best for you. And quite frankly, you might not even be best for it either. It's kind of a shared
Mhm.
energy in that standpoint, but it brings you to bigger and better things. And that's a big thing I like to call out here too, because I could be mad at that job for firing me. I could be upset at that girl that broke my heart, or friends that didn't stand by. And hopefully, I'm not stirring up too much trouble. I don't know if people see this or not. We'll see who's tuning in, but it is that idea that I could be mad at these people all the time, but it's like, but they also defined who I am. You know what I mean? And they put me on a path that it sucks that these people aren't a part of my life, or things didn't turn out the way that I hoped, but I've built to so many other things. If I didn't do Terra, I wouldn't be meeting you right, about a year ago and doing this podcast at this moment. Who knows
Yeah,
what my life would be,
absolutely.
who knows what things I'd be chasing. So it forces us. And that also is kind of a Five of Pentacles energy, an area of like lack, of struggle and need on these things. But it
Mhm.
does bring us to a bigger principle if we find the medicine, if you find that cure. Because I like to think every tarot card presents a problem and a solution. And if that works
Yeah.
with your situation, that makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and this might be like kind of overreaching or maybe like falling off the topic, but like the world the universe is wild in that like even in some of the shittiest moments, like there there is a light at the end of that tunnel. Like that sounds so fucking cliche, but like there really
No, but
is,
it's true.
and like you know, to like not get into the specifics, but I had, there was a fallout at the beginning of my sort of like turmoil, and just not too long ago, they reached out to me again because you know, they saw my public apology and stuff, and we ended up sitting down, um, and had a extensive conversation about it to hear each other out, to kind of clear the air on some of the things. And it ended with a hug. And
Mhm.
I think I not to like I felt like I regained my friend, so it's just like, and sure, there's probably going to be some more things that can be improved, but like just the fact that um going in with some anxiety and then being able to part ways in a positive state, and like ending with a hug, like
Hmm.
that's a beautiful thing. So I'm very much
Absolutely.
a believer in like going through the shit and just keep pushing on through, because
Hmm.
you're eventually going to come out of it. I mean, you're going to need some help. You're going to need to hear some things from people, whether like you said, whether you want to hear it or not. But
Hmm.
it's all, the whole, even like the concept of like failing and failing forward, like all of that stuff is like they
Hmm.
hold a lot of weight, even again, as cliche as they may sound, but I do
Hmm.
believe that very much. It's just because of my own
Absolutely.
experience. So
Yeah.
it's something I think like people need to be open to embracing more often than not. Everyone just wants to win. Everyone wants to just keep climbing up, but
Yeah.
you gotta fall every once in a while, because
Oh yeah.
you learn more
Well,
from
and
it
that's part of
sometimes.
my one of my biggest spreads is the hero's journey too, where I literally take the 12 phases of the actual hero's journey itself. For those that are familiar with like Joseph Campbell's work, and it literally talks about your tests, your challenges, your enemies, your allies, your the mentorships, the areas of things you got to work on, what creates the call, what might cause you to refuse the call, and all these things. And so as much as we hate it, that's all part of the journey. I mean, it's part of the reason even with television we get bored if like the character's just winning all the time. After a while,
Yeah,
you're just kind of like, where's the struggle? Where's the I can't relate to these people. Even Superman, they've had to make more flawed or they've had to present more challenges out there. And while we like a Superman that can come in and save the day, we need to kind of have it mean something a little bit more, or what's the point?
yeah.
Um, and it's interesting too because it reminded me of my Confucius card right here too. I'll hold
Okay.
it in front. I don't know if that frames it a little bit better. There's probably a little glare on him there.
Okay.
But it's one of my favorite ones, and I come back to it often because it talks about how the wisdom you seek also seeks you, and that feels very Yoda and very Jedi and easy, like a fortune cookie thing. But it really is true, and it applies to love and your career and the things that are meant for you. And I feel like this is what really actually creates destiny or true paths for yourselves is the idea that when you're applying for a job, somewhere out there is a job that is at least looking for most of the qualifications that you have. And
Hmm.
sometimes the more specific, the more unique it is to you. Dating, especially, it sucks. We'd love to kind of get them on the first try, or we have people we connect with and think would be good for us. But I always look at it as this two of cups energy. It's that giving and that receiving on there too. And it's because you're both looking for the same things. You have things to offer that they need, and they have things to offer that you need and want, and work in that balance and
Mm,
harmony there. And so I think that's kind of to your point about individuals coming back. And I kind of have to do this with a lot of my friendships, especially. And I think that's sometimes even harder than work or your love life because
hmm.
friends, you really want to be there. I often say a friend breakup's even harder than a relationship breakup because it sucks to lose a
Yeah,
friend. But in times of real trial, they will gravitate back to you if they want to give you that chance, if they feel like you've earned it and feel like you've done well, and vice
right.
versa. And
Hmm.
sometimes you have to let those things go, but it is kind of that if it's meant to be, you let it free and it'll come back.
Yeah,
But that's that kind of energy and seeking too. And it's hard. You have to put that challenge,
yeah,
and I like to leave myself open to it. But healing
right.
is a big part of what I like to focus with what I do for sure.
Absolutely. And yeah, and that was the sort of almost miraculous thing about it, is because I got to a place where I was able to put that stuff behind me. So
Yeah.
this surprise, which turned out to be a nice surprise, was like, oh, I mean, all right, they
Yeah, for
pushed
real.
me, and then I was just like, yeah, if you want to talk, let's talk. Granted,
Yeah.
I had my guard up, but
Sure.
after a couple hours, then we were able to share a couple of little laughs here and there when we start reflecting on like the reality, and even like just the distortion of reality,
Yeah.
but yeah, man. Yeah, like a friendship breakup, certainly. It can oftentimes be really tough, and yeah, and sometimes to really be able to appreciate a true win, a victory, you gotta, yeah, sometimes you just really gotta. I just like to say you gotta eat a lot of shit sometimes. I mean,
Absolutely. Oh, I say the same
comedians
thing.
talk about
Absolutely.
it. combat sports, so it happens a lot. And to kind of even to use an even simpler example, like, because you mentioned dating, like, man, like during like elementary school and like high school, the amount of times I got friend zoned, man,
Yeah, for real.
that sucked ass. But then without all of that, and I guess me being so persistent, I mean, now I'm with my high school sweetheart for almost 20
Oh,
years. So
that's
it's just
nice.
like,
Yeah.
I had to get friend zoned all those times.
Sure.
Otherwise I
Sure.
wouldn't have.
No, for
Yeah.
real. Well,
Yeah.
and you have to kind of flip the script on it as hard as it does, because I get frustrated because I joke that life, especially dating, jobs, it always feels like Lucy in the football, from like the old Peanuts cartoons where she sets it down,
Yeah.
and I feel like Charlie Brown every time. You're like, no, 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 this is the one we're
Yeah.
gonna hit. It makes sense. And
Mhm.
it's funny too, because I'm even superstitious about when I move. Every time I've moved, I've lost my job in one shape or another for just
Mhm.
one reason. So and people tell me, I was like, that's one of the anxieties I have when I go. I mean, I had an offer on the table before I moved into this place, and then afterwards, they rescinded the offer, and I was like, you guys have got to be
Wow.
kidding me.
Mm.
Yeah, and it's fine because I keep reminding myself too. It's hard because I'm still applying to the corporate stuff, or at least trying to get myself some day job things, because as you
Right.
know, art doesn't always pay the bills the way we would like it to.
Hmm.
But I'm playing both sides at this point. I'm saying to myself, I'm going to keep applying to create stability in my day-to-day 9 to 5 world or what have you. I'm out there doing Lyft all the time, which if it didn't take such wear and tear on my car, I wouldn't mind it. I like driving
Right.
people around. I like talking with people that want to engage with me. I love talking to people who have never been to Richmond, and they want to know what to explore, because locals, they've seen it all. They don't need to hear about Carytown or the Bird Theater, or all these, fun places to dine at or whatever. But out of towners, I could be like, hey, what are you in the mood for? Do you want, I can name like a million Jamaican spots. I can show you the best ramen place in the city, in my opinion.
Mm.
Museums, you've got everything from like the Poe Museum to the VMFA, all that good stuff. But I just hate, I'm like doing that grind, and it's like, man, I got to gas up my tank now. Like, and I write all that stuff off of my taxes because you absolutely have to. It's so much dang wear and tear.
Oh yeah.
But for the amount of time and work I put in, it just still doesn't feel like it's like waiting tables. Sometimes it'll be popping off and you're making lots of money and people are tipping you and blah, blah, blah. But other times you're doing that grind. And I like that flexibility with it because, I've got a couple of markets and things lined up. I've got one of the River City Witches one on June 22nd at Stone. I don't know if you'll be at that one, but I'm going to be at that one at Stone Brewery.
What, the 22nd?
Oh, I'm sorry, not River City Witches. I'm sorry, it's Moon. It's RVA Moon Market. I'm sorry, get them mixed up, and I
Yeah, no, that's
apologize.
understandable.
Smart promote.
No,
I
I
see. I used to just do one or two, and now I have so many. I have to keep track who's running which one.
yeah.
But yeah,
Well,
it
that
should be
could be
the
a good thing.
RVA Moon Market, I believe, on the 22nd at Stone Brewery is one of the ones I've
Okay.
got coming up here. But
Yeah, I'm gonna
um,
be in Norfolk that weekend. So,
no worries,
but
man. No
yeah,
worries. I feel that though.
there was something you said
But
before. I- something along the like, oftentimes when you're searching for something, it's also searching for you. And
mhm,
you know, I've been vocal about that as well, particularly regarding just artists that find
mhm,
themselves hitting that art block or creative block or whatever, however you want to
mhm,
phrase it. I don't know if you're familiar with um Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art, but he talks about um the muse.
mhm.
Sometimes it requires like the muse to find you instead of the other way around. So, I always talk about, yeah, sometimes you just got to put yourself in a place where the muse can find you, whether you're doing like
Definitely.
it could be like doing a bunch of chores and just building up productivity to the point where it's like, all right, now whatever it is, like, just feeling good about accomplishing something. Now it's like, all right, now I think I can actually sit down and create something. Um,
Mhm.
you know, so that, what you said had really resonated with me because I'm always thinking about things like that, like the entity finding you when you're searching so
Yeah.
so hard for it. So, and Yeah, like that, like another thing people kind of need to remind themselves of sometimes is like sometimes you gotta like try to put yourself in that position. Like if you're hit, if you're feeling you've hit like a some type of roadblock, like sometimes you just gotta like just the effort of trying to overcome it as opposed to
Mhm.
stopping and turning back. It's like no, like I think you keep showing your efforts, it'll
Yeah.
come to you instead.
Definitely. Well, that's where tarot itself can act as its own kind of muse for things because it's just kind of like that simple advice on these things where sometimes it's going to tell you, hey, you got to walk away from it, whether you want to do that completely or whether you want to shift gears altogether. Sometimes it's like, hey, go give yourself a little R&R or go be out in nature and things like that. And I think that those are those gentle reminders of how to create your own serendipity. And it's where things like prayer and manifest overlap because in my opinion they're all kind of the same thing. They're just different terms, different
Right.
same
Mhm.
principles, different names, labels, all that
Absolutely.
stuff. Well, in the final phase of, prayer or manifestation or things like that, and it's kind of Arthurian and its concept too, is being okay without it. Deciding that at the end of the day, if it's not meant for me, then what's the worst case scenario? And you don't have to look at it as that as a truly negative thing. What would be so bad if this didn't happen? With a relationship, you're like, okay, if I let this girl go, I've now created room for other girls to come into my life, or men or women, or depending what people are into. For me, it's a woman, but knowing, hey, I could sit here chasing or waiting or holding on to this person that like, is breadcrumbing me, or every now and then maybe show some signs that they're into me, but if they can't fully commit to me, then what's the point? Why would I waste either of our time anymore? And you learn to accept those things. And sometimes in that release, it creates that serendipity for it to happen. You could say, oh, I am going to go on for a walk right now, and you bump into someone or you meet someone at a coffee shop, or you could be, down by the river and you see a bird or something that's like, oh my God, that's it. I've got the idea, you even look at a lot of like movies, especially when they're solving mysteries and things. Sometimes it's happenstance that helps them figure out that last missing clue, whether it's talking with people, whether it's resting and recharging to give your mind a little bit of that extra juice and things, because it takes that sort of release to have that happen. And that's why tarot is important. I tell people if they're stuck, if they can't think through it, let's throw down the cards and let's just see what they say. And some people, I get it, not everybody is like feeling much. I will be honest, I think tarot is, like the Beatles said, the love you make is the love you take. So be prepared to be open-minded, because I tell people it's like we can do it in generalities, but I'm going to speak in generalities if that's what we're focusing on. But if there's something you'd like to really kind of create a thought experiment with, then I can specify. And I know a lot of people are like, well, you're the psychic. Aren't you supposed to know? It's like, I don't claim to be psychic. That's not what I do. Some people have that. Some people can live by that. And that's why tarot comes in many shapes and sizes. And I don't think there's any one right or wrong way to play. It's an art form like anything else. And if you feel in your bone that you can see a future or a vision, I mean, I've had some spooky things happen. I mean, sadly, that girl that broke my heart, I get nervous about her showing up at the Poe Museum because she showed up at one of the big birthday bashes a year or two ago. And I was like, great, this is awkward. And leading up to the thing, I had an anxiety dream that I was gonna see her, and it was embarrassing and it was bad and it triggered a lot of things. And it's stuff where I want to move on. I want to have that closure because, with ex situationships and things like that, old friends, I like to kind of just like let that my anger will fester, it'll boil, and I was like, I don't need that. I don't need that negativity in my life. They don't need that or deserve that. We can just go on our own way, and things happen the way they did. And lo and behold, she showed up 2 days later at the thing, and you're like, dang man, that's so weird. Because some people are like, oh, you manifested that. Some people are like, oh man, maybe that's just your anxiety and your intuition just telling you like this is something in your gut, and it just happened to be the time that it's there. And it's fine because she's allowed to enjoy her life, and I don't want it to be this thing that I want to lead some big witch hunt against them, because at the end of the day I can be mad or upset or frustrated and disappointed, But at the same time, without them, would I've gotten so involved in this? Would I have found an art that I truly feel passionate about and is a brand new market for me that I can kind of tap into, because I do live by that Gretzky quote, of go where the puck's going, not where it's been, because you want to find these new territories. You yourself have said, "Oh, I don't really see a lot of tarot readers at this thing," and it's kind of on the rise. A lot of people own their own tarot decks and things, and some are more open minded and curious to see these. Others are like, "No, I do my own. I don't want to whatever." But I want to branch out to like weddings and things like that because I know a lot of like wedding folk have said, that would be something cool and different, and that's an experience, especially for the people that hate catching bouquets or the garters or all the lovey-dovey stuff, or the people that love it at the same hand that they're like,
Yeah.
they see these special people finding love and they come up, and
Yes.
that's the number one thing everyone is embarrassed to get a reading about. And I can tell when they're going to ask, and they're like, I was like, I swear I'm not psychic. It's just everybody does the same thing. We're embarrassed. We're shuffling our feet. Even guys especially too. It's hard. I do a lot of them for women and things. Um, and it's great, and especially because I specialize in releasing things. So it's like, if we got to get over exes, like, let's commiserate about, people that have been in our lives or people that broke our heart, reminding us of these things, of what they can lead to and shape for us in a bigger level.
Absolutely. I would even say, um, it could, whether it's like a placebo effect or not, but I think it could certainly have a uh positive outcome for, because let's face it, at weddings there's gonna be your, maybe your handful of people that are like in a bad place emotionally, and
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
begrudgingly going to the wedding because they were invited and they want to be there for their friends or yada yada yada. But like,
I've been that person, honestly, so
yeah.
I get it like
So
numerous
like,
times. I started bringing dates where people are like, "Do you need to bring a date?" It's like, "Yeah, I'm tired of going to weddings alone. I'm sorry. I don't care what the
yeah,
situation is. I'm bringing someone. I don't care if it's like a friend at this point. I'm like, I just need a
right.
partner in crime."
But I think like, yeah, for someone that be in that position, if they just indulge in doing a reading, like they could be coming out of it in a much better attitude as opposed to how they came to the wedding. I mean, that's just my
Absolutely.
opinion, and
Oh,
like,
100%. And I've
yeah,
seen it all. I've seen some that are looking for a little bit of hope, a little things. I've had some people from the catering be like, "Yo, can I get a reading?" And I'm like, "Yeah, come on, dude. Like, whatever
yeah,
you want." I've had people that don't want to leave the table and the line's forming, and I was like, "Hey, I would love." And that's what I'm like, literally giving. I was like, "I've given you my card like 3 times. Just call me. Let's schedule something." I definitely keep my digital readings as cheap as possible, and I tell people, I was like, "Hey, look, man, if you want a quick hit of just like getting out of your head and looking at some things in a different way, I can make it quick and easy." I definitely like you. I like to take the scenic route in the conversation, but when it comes down to like, hey, let's keep it snappy and short, I can do that. I can get directly to the point and what I'm kind of seeing here. And then, that's why I like to let people even take a picture of it, because some people are like, "Oh, I don't even know what the tarot cards mean." And I'm like, forget the words on there at the bottom. Don't worry about that. We'll come to that. And you can use that to research it on your own time, which I encourage people. It's like, if you really want to dissect these cards, like, do a deep dive yourself and understand it, especially if you want to make as much sense of it as possible. It will provide more and more clarity to you. But it's I think, even like I did with you, like, you see an art piece, you feel something, you imagine that, and that's the whole reason there's images with it. And that's why I like to go well beyond the writer's weight tarot, because some people even feel if there's like strict, like, nope, this is definitively what this card means. And I was like, no, I like to look at, there's light sides, there's shadow sides. The light sides can bring hope and joy and optimism, and the shadow side is just like homework. And that's great for the A-type people. Some of the A-type people like, no, give me something I can do, give me something I can work on, and these
yeah.
things. And that's what I like to do. That's what I like to create for people. Like I said, I can't emphasize enough, the thought experiment is really the way I feel like going about it. And then the magic can be all the poetry and stuff that's in between, because even talk to a few people, even a placebo effect, honestly, even that's kind of magical,
Oh,
if
absolutely. I believe in
if
placebo
you can
effects.
train your mind to feel better about things. And it's good for the body. We need
Yeah,
these things.
absolutely. I mean, I did a post on this like a while ago about like, yeah, well, I hope this plays into the placebo effect, because this, I mean, that's kind of how I would use it. But like, I work, I'm self-employed. I work at home. I'm here all day, every day, unless I need to go out and run
Yeah,
errands. But there are times where I will like dress up like I'm gonna go out just to sort of trick the mind of like I'm gonna be productive today. Because if I'm wearing sweats
absolutely.
and stuff like that, if I'm wearing comfy clothes, I'm just gonna want to be comfortable and hang out on the couch or whatever. But if
Yeah.
I put on some shorts and like an outdoor shirt, I'm gonna feel like I'm doing something, even if I'm still hanging out at home. But at least I'm
Yeah,
doing
no, for
something.
real.
Yeah,
We call that Temperance Energy. That's actually one of the major Arcana cards there too.
that's
A lot
hilarious.
of Temperance. Yeah. Well, and it's basically like while the Hanged Man can be about flipping the perspective and things, and there's still kind of a sense of being trapped and stuck with that one too. Temperance is about like altering it. So like if you feel like it's kind of like an odd couple effect. If you feel like you're like the A type and you're being a workaholic and you're pushing yourself too hard, and you're focusing on being professional all the time and got to be uptight, then that's when it's like, hey dude, let it all hang out, man. Like wear some comfy clothes, like eat some Cheetos, make a mess, like whatever. I was even saying to my friend today in the car, she's like, I've been like in this move, and I was like, well, I think you take a lot of your days off, and I think that's admirable. I'm working on the other side of it, but I was like, I think you take it to like clean and handle everything. I was like, you owe yourself what I call kind of a fuck off day, or you're just kind of like, I'm gonna be like the laziest piece of shit that I can. And it's because you know how to pick it back up and you're gonna clean up the mess later and deal with all these things. And the vice versa of that is if you feel like you've been this lazy piece of shit, and I've dealt with this having many a remote job of like, oh my God, I'm wearing pajamas every day. I joke that sometimes when I go out in public, it would look like I was in like some sort of like political thriller, because like you wear like a baseball cap and glasses, and you're like wearing all this like unkempt stuff on there too. And it is that idea that it's like, okay, if I feel like I'm slacking off a lot, I need to, whether I'm going to go see people. Because even today, I was like, I'm going to shower. I'm going to take some time for me. Not that I don't shower regularly, but like, sometimes every now and then you skip the shower and you're like, this is a
Yeah.
definite shower day. And I like that window of time where I was like, I'm going to take like a 30 to 45-minute shower because that's what I want to do. And that's what's going to help me feel good. And you do all that extra grooming and TLC because the temperance energy I see is like real alchemy, and that's basic alchemy on a decent level. Like this doesn't have to be turning literal lead into literal gold. This can be the idea that I am doing things about my life, because emotional alchemy is about the easiest alchemy in the world. Maintaining it can be hard, but it is fact. I can turn like a bad mood into a good mood or a healthy mood or a productive mood on there by having that mindset and that focus of this. And temperance is real big. That's a big one a lot of times where I'm saying to myself, okay, cool. Even Sunday, I've been burning the candle at both ends, doing everything I had. A friend of mine was like, you want to go to the Ren Fair? And I couldn't technically afford it. I had money, but when bills are coming, having money is relative. Like I need a certain amount above what I've got, blah, blah, blah. But I did say I'm not taking enough of this time to do these things for myself. I did decide, hey, I'm going to work a little harder Saturday to make that happen. And even getting myself gigs is this motivator because I sold one of my hero's journeys to a friend of a friend the other day. And I was like, you know what? With that and the odd job I did that morning, I was like, I can take the whole day off now.
Mhm.
And even then I was like, I probably could have doubled my money and gotten back out there and blah, blah, blah. But I was like, you know what? I had also things I needed to and wanted to and kind of have to do. But this is that reminder that if I can get my business going, then that's that reminder of, if I make enough money, I can take a day off that I've earned and I can really relish in that and get the most out of it. And so this is why I'm pushing myself and doing these things, and the beauty at least of jobs with these ride shares, which don't get me wrong, they have major, major problems. They need to invest a lot more in their workers and things. And I don't even feel like it should be at the customer's expense. I think it should be the businesses, but I digress. I
Mhm.
do like that flexibility, being able to say, hey, you know what? If I'm doing this, then I'm going to work a little these days, or I'm going to pick up these days instead, or knowing that when I have earned enough of these rewards, then that's that motivator. Be like, okay, you want to stop doing Lyft? Make your artwork. Make it happen. Make it, and you can lead a horse to water, short of drowning the dang thing in the trough. You can't, make it drink, but you can create every chance for serendipity, and And while it's embarrassing to ask a million girls out and be told no, with
Yeah.
jobs and things, as embarrassing that is, it's a little bit more of a like, let's keep it going. Let's be told no as many times as we can until we find someone that says, you know what, that's cool. That's what I want to take a chance on, because I want to be able to do mine at bars, at parties, events. And I've been hired a lot, and people like, are you busy during Halloween? I was like, sadly, that's the only time I'm like busy, but I'm working to change that. I want to say, oh, I'm busy during wedding season because it's wedding season right now. I've had to cancel on a number of plans during like October. And as sad as I was to not see people, I've said, you know what? This is a social thing for me. I'm meeting new and different people, and I'm sharing and enjoying my business. And I know there's no such thing as the perfect job out there, but this is the one thing I want to keep investing in. And
Sure.
if it's a part-time job, then the money is all mine. That stuff I can go get more tattoos and shoot myself to bar nights, squirrels games, all that stuff I love to do. And that's cool too. Best case scenario, I make it fully sustainable on there. And it's going to take time.
Yeah.
I've accepted, I've been doing it for a couple years. I hate sales, but I like doing sales when it's something people want to buy and I want to sell.
Oh,
And I think
for
this
sure.
wisdom seeking each other, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, like I resonate with that, like in terms of like um, you know, making an effort to go out, whether or not you can afford it or not. Like, for instance, like I mean, with like events, like if I'm not
Mhm.
working at events, I I guess just to be in that environment, even if I can't, even if I'm not being a vendor or if I can't afford to support the local businesses and the artists, but to still be in that environment, see the people I know that are going to be there that I care about. Like, I think that it's just good for the soul to be able to still do that, even if, again, like
Definitely.
you might feel
Well,
FOMO
and I
because
think
you're not working, but it's just like it's still good for the mind and the spirit to be involved somehow.
Yeah. Well, and we've chosen that path, so we owe it to ourselves to commit it. That's that
Yeah,
sacrifice that comes with these things too.
right.
I mean, I'm sure a lot of celebrities, there's some people that, had different advantages versus others. And don't get me wrong, a lot of the biopics and things aren't always exactly historically accurate, if you will. But
Right.
like, what if we at least learned that they at least come with those struggles and those sacrifice and that opportunity there too? And it can be enjoyable. And even yourself, when you've said, oh, I can't afford to buy things or do things, you yourself even offer a service right now. That's that kind of thing. Very few artists, I can't imagine, wouldn't want to do a podcast and things. You know what I mean? Where it's that kind of thing where like that's an easy gig where that is direct promotion for yourself. And that is something that you sign up for. We'd love to be paid to get to go on, podcasts and things like that. I'm not picking
Right.
on your model. In all scenarios, we'd love to make money for everything we do
Of
and we
course.
have,
Yeah,
but
I
those
would.
more opportunities. It's the idea that like when you're meeting people at these events, that's an opportunity for you to engage. I honestly grab business cards and stuff and say, hey, I do tarot readings. A
Mhm.
big thing I've wanted to do, and I wish I could afford to pay artists, especially people that like draw and illustrate and all that. It's a very hard to, and I really want to compensate for them at the time. But right now, I'd love to create a custom tarot deck, like a
Oh,
tarot deck that
absolutely.
matches my brand, my style, and my thing. But that's 78 cards. That's
Yeah.
78 designs. And let's be real. I mean, probably most designs at minimum, you probably don't want to charge any less than $100. And I think that's reasonable for a lot
Mm.
of things. That's my policy with it. I've told people in the past, like, if you've paid less than $100 for that, you already got a deal from that artist. Like, really, I was like, yeah, dude, it takes time and effort. People don't realize the time and energy it makes to just create like a black and white image, let
Mhm.
alone to add all this coloring and detail and
Oh,
shading and
yeah.
lighting, shadow, and all that to it. It's a hard thing to kind of work through on that. Um, and so it's like in my head, and some people are like, well, what about a Kickstarter and all these things? But I was like, yeah, but I still got to be able to make sure the artist is on board with me. And that's 78 different individual images that
Yeah.
are on these things. Now, some of it can be a little copy and paste, especially with the swords and all that good stuff too. But it is like, no, I still want that detail and that personality, but I want to make sure that they're in it with me, and that we can find a way for them to be compensated, because me, I can hawk the deck everywhere I go. I mean, that's that kind of think if I'm using my own original deck, people are going to see it, they're going to love it and make that happen. But I
Mm.
do love to network with artists of whether it's like, hey, do you just want to split a booth at this thing? Or is there something we could team up and do for each other? And even just having, people on, if both of you do podcasts, then it's the idea that we're also swapping audiences with each other,
Right.
bringing people into it, making it hip. Because as artists, we owe it to network and work with each other. It's very challenging, especially other tarot readers. And I know it gets hard because sometimes we're like, oh, shoot, there's a lot of tarot readers at this event. And sometimes you're like, I'd like to be the only one on there too. But also at the same time, God forbid you get a line forming, you might want someone else to go so they at least appreciate the art of tarot and say, hey, you know
Mm.
what? Next time I'm going to come back and get a reading from this guy or that guy and a lot of these things. And
Yeah.
sometimes scoping out these events are as simple. When I was at the Ren Fair, I think I only spotted like one tarot reader, and
Okay.
admirably, she was working for tips and donations, and that's what I've done at a lot of my, at certain events there too. Like like the Poe Museum, that's where I got started. Definitely a lot of museum enterprises, that's kind of my thing, and that's fine. That the museums or the locations are fine with things like we don't have to pay them to be here, and it's entertainment, and I don't mind busking for my stuff. I've told people sometimes I've made more money busking because like it's kind of like the automatic gratuity between rolling the dice to see what you could get beyond that. Some people are like, oh,
Right.
let's tip them more because they've deserved more. And I love people that even if I have a flat rate or it's a party or things like that, that they still tip and donate and support these things. But it is about getting that lay of the land of what can I do for myself? What can I understand and what can I shape? And, I got curious. I mean, that Ren Fair in Virginia, it is, at least about an hour away.
Mm.
But, if I could pull in, about 150, $200, that could be worth making that drive every day. It's a long commute. Maybe I make some other arrangements to make it easier on myself, but like not a bad way to go, to check these things out and just see what's offered there too. Kind of a
That's,
long tangent there. I don't know quite
no,
where I
no,
was
it's
going
fine.
with
No,
everything.
absolutely. All good. No, it's fine. And it's refreshing where because again, I do it too. So I mean,
No,
plenty
for real, for real.
like I'm talking too much and I need I'm here to serve the guest. Um,
Yeah.
but when's the last time you like or yeah, like when's the last time you've done a reading for like a skeptic?
Ooh,
Yeah.
actually, it wasn't that long ago. I was actually at a party. So it's actually a friend, it's Caroline Denton. I hope I'm saying her last name right there. But yeah,
I think it's
um,
Denton.
yeah, yeah. But it was great, and I hope I'm not embarrassing her when I say so. But I told her I was like, no, I completely understand. My money's tight. She originally like wanted to like pay me as a whole, like for the event. Like she was kind of like, I'd love to give you some money. I got a lot of artists friends and things like that. She did come back, and I was like, girl, I'm trying to make my bills, so I get it too. I was like, no hard feelings. Like she's just like, I just can't afford to do it. And I was like, no, I get it. We're artists. We're figuring it out. We're doing these things, and please, Caroline, do not think I'm calling you out here. I like to let people know we are struggling out there. So when we charge
Yeah.
money, it's because we have put our time and effort into our art. But those are those instances where I was like, you know what? I'll bring my stuff because it's kind of a fun party trick. And for me, it's an excuse to socialize. And I may not seem it, but I am kind of an introvert at heart. I'm an INFJ. So we're like the extroverts of introverts in terms of that personality type.
That would be an
And
ambivert, no? Because that was my understanding.
that's I literally said they should be called an ambivert. Like I think calling
Oh,
them an introvert is not fair to it. And it's so funny. Certain people like roll their eyes like, wasn't everyone an ambivert? I was like, it doesn't matter. These are all
yeah,
constructs, but like people operate the way they do. And even one of my best buddies, he's like, there's no way you're an introvert. I was like, that's my default setting though. If I'm completely like if I'm not fully comfortable with the group and not hitting that vibe, I clam up. Or it's that vice versa. I get talking to fill that silence. And then I'm like, oh
right.
my God. It's like those memes that have been floating around too. You're like, I feel like I'm not saying anything. Is that weird? I should say something. And then it's like the follow is like, now I'm saying too much. I feel like that's weird. Maybe I should not be saying anything. And
That's so
it's these
funny.
social anxieties. So for me, it was kind of a thing where I was just like, you know what? I'll bring it anyways. If people want to tip and donate, that's fine. If they don't, whatever. Again, this is stuff that puts my business and things out there. There was two girls, I think they were roommates. And one of them like loves tarot. She's all about it. She's here for it. She's looking at a job opportunity. And I was like, hell yeah. I was like, you're my vibe. And her roommate, it was funny. I wouldn't peg her to be the skeptic. Very sweet girl. She's very kind of like light and airy in her personality. Kind of had a little bit of that bubbly thing, like not to the point where she, was the kind of person like, because she still would stand her ground on things. Like she's not like a pushover. I'll put it that way. But you'd kind of maybe you wouldn't expect her to be the one that's kind of the skeptic. You're like, oh, okay, like you've been so nice and friendly. It's surprising to me that like that would strike you as something to be skeptical of. But I get it. That's the thing that comes with tarot. A lot of people like, I don't know if I believe in it. And that's why I really stand by. I was like, the way I do it, I don't really think there should be a belief of anything. It should be a social experiment, something you engage or do. And she herself said I'm a little bit of a skeptic, and she could have been humoring me by the end of it, saying, like you've made me a believer or whatever too. But I like to remind people, sometimes with tarot, it can be the journey and not the destination. If we're smiling and laughing and having fun, that's a good time. I do tell people it really, really helps if there is something we're touching on that it's like, oh, that makes sense. That applies to this thing in my life. You don't have to air it. I do tell people, your tarot thing can be like a birthday wish, keep it secret. And sometimes those are weird to me because sometimes people are like, wow, that's really weird. You hit on the things those time. I was like, don't say that because then I scare myself on these things. But yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of skeptics that warm up to it. I've had people they kind of come up as kind of like a gag to do it as a lark, and then they're kind of like, oh wow, that's deeper than I was expecting. And I think to like you were saying earlier where it didn't feel like I was performing, that's not the goal, but even in still things, especially like writing and acting, which are the two biggest, previous arts for me, it
Mhm.
has to be real. You know what I mean? It has to be real or it doesn't feel sincere. And it's not that I'm putting on any sort of act or things with it. It's a communication thing. It's kind of like public speaking. The idea
Yes.
is that I want you to feel something. I want you to be real. I want you to dig deep. I feel bad when people will cry during some of my readings, and it's never that I'm like barking or yelling at them or
Right, of
anything.
course. But you're hitting
It's
a nerve, right? You're like hitting.
yeah. Well, and it's because, if there's one thing I understand, and it's one of the reasons I've gravitated to Poe as kind of an inspiration, other than being like a local, figure, is I understand heartbreak, it's kind of that Robin Williams principle of, sometimes the happiest people are kind of the saddest. And I'm
Oh,
not trying to
yeah.
depress people, but I've got a lot of demons in here. I mean, especially as an actor and a dude who's been trying to find jobs, off and on and been let go. I have powerful traumatic feelings of rejection. Rejection is a big thing. And I hate it. Like sometimes I'm that kind. I'm so petty when I don't like when someone's like unfriended me on Facebook where I was like, what did I say? What did I
Mm.
do? What can I and I hate that because some of those people, it's like, I don't even talk to these people. Why do I care? Because I never gave them a second thought until all of a sudden and social media kind of corrupted that. And that is kind of that devil energy, where you self-sabotage in a lot of ways too. But rejection and loss and heartbreak. And that's why I call myself Irish Wake Tarot, because I tell people it's like, let's give something a funeral in your life, let's memorialize something for you. And I like playing fast and loose because even though, the first card's kind of what we're burying or what we're releasing or putting to rest. I was like, well, if there's good principles in there, we can turn that into a seed. We bury, the deceased gets buried in the ground, and that does create and share life throughout it. I mean, even just animals die, that contributes to the big circle of life itself. And so I tell people, it's like, if there's the good things you want to hold on to it, cool, but bury anything that stands in the way of that. Put that behind you, release it, because while our loved ones would, appreciate the fact that we, mourn them as long as we do, we can't live in that state forever. They'd want us to live and go on and thrive. And Irish Wake itself is that celebration of death. It's a very Day of the Dead kind of principle that we have
Right.
drinks, there's revelry, and there's good times. And that's
Yeah.
even where kind of that saying of, give something an Irish Wake is like, let's have a drink while we're kind of getting through it, because
Yeah.
that's what we need.
Mm,
And that's a big part of it.
nice. Yeah, it's too bad my wife isn't around because I would very much. No, because she's in between jobs, and I don't know. I'd be intrigued to see, like, what cards would she have pulled out if you were doing
Mhm.
a reading with her, just to and I don't know where she stands and like, if she believes in that or not, but I know she'd be willing to even just to indulge it and see what comes out of it.
Hmm.
But yeah, just because she's been like like very stressed out about making decisions and just like
Hmm.
at the time like taking in all the help that she could get, and sitting here with you,
Yeah.
I'm like, huh, I wonder if, I would believe that that the deck would probably provide some, at least some relief, because she's just in her head so much about the decisions that she needs to make. Um, but if
It's
you don't
hard.
mind,
It's
I'm
true
sorry.
devil energy. It haunts you. It taunts you. It
Yeah,
you live in that self-sabotage or that torture or that anxiety. And that's that, whether you want to believe in the devil or devil energy itself, it's real.
yeah,
It's anxiety, it's stress. It's
absolutely.
problematic.
Yeah, and it's and that's the thing, because like for her, like when it comes to like between the two of us, I'm the one, maybe because I'm an artist or whatever, but I'm
Mhm.
definitely the more like emotional and like, like
Yeah.
I show the signs of anxiety and stress and all this stuff, where she's much
Yeah.
more um put together and a little more uh level-headed, like she knows
Sure.
how to keep her composure. I'm like like for example, like in our wedding, like I was like the most emotional groom you could probably ever see, like
Yeah.
for real, and
Like that
she's
one
like the
meme of the
one.
guy crying.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, there's photos. There's like pictures of me like crying, like in our
Oh,
first
yeah.
dance. I like nuzzled in on her shoulder and her neck because I'm
Oh,
like hiding my tears. Yeah, it's like a whole thing. But
yeah.
yeah, it's just it does like speaks. It does speak volumes when she is going through something. Like, oh, it's like it's
Hmm.
heavy. Um,
Yeah. Well, and that's what's interesting too, because that's where the suits really kind of play like a big part in everything. We love all the major arcana because those are like core principles and they're supposed to be like a bigger part of your norm and your existence, fate, destiny, if you even want to put it in those terms. But the major arcana is all the little baby steps that go with it too, that I find to be very important throughout these journeys and things. And it's funny because I try to break down, the four suits of anything. You could take any, group of four. You could take the Ninja Turtles, you could take the Golden
yeah,
Girls, you could take like Seinfeld, any of those shows that has like a group of four, because there's so many. People love it. Girls. Like,
yeah.
and it stems back to, I think it's the Greek humors is where a lot of it kind of stems from. And it's kind of these universal, one of these kind of four elements, even just the four elements, earth, wind, fire, water, those kinds of things.
Mm.
And it speaks to itself too, because I kind of like to joke that certain ones go off in certain pairings. You kind of have like the cups are your emotions and your feelings. That's kind of like associated with your heart, and it's like a water malleable energy. While the fire is like the passionate, the crazy, the soulful energy. They also like have withstood the most trials, because fire is hot and challenging and things on there. And so those kind of go together because that's kind of your heart and your soul kind of work together in tandem. Well, like the sword is like the mind, decisions, tactics, the brain, thinking, anxieties, worries, concerns, but a lot of like the thoughts that go with that. While the pentacles are kind of pragmatic earth energy, strong, durable, reliable, real, tangible things you can see. And those kind of go hand in hand because, the mind kind of helps determine logic and work and thinking and practicality on there too. And so everybody either kind of adheres to, one element or the other, but that's why kind of certain elements work together, is because it is again that two of cups energy, that it's
Yeah.
bringing out the good and the bad. And that's just literally how tarot works itself. If you feel like you've been too much in your head, then maybe let your emotions kind of take the reins for a little bit. Or if you're feeling really emotional or overwhelmed and burnt out, take a look at the things that you've built and the resources that you have. I mean, it's why they exist kind of on this wheel of fortune or the world card of all these cycles, is that even though we have our own horoscopes and elements and energies and these things, it doesn't mean that we can't bring in these other elements, these other principles, because it's like baking a cake or making a food dish. It's all these ingredients that make it work, work, and maybe you want to make a whole new dish altogether, and requires these things. But there's room for all of it, and the cycles are never done. Immediate cycles might finish, but the world keeps going on. Even after we die, the world continues without us. You know what I mean? As
Right.
sad as that is, things keep
Yeah.
moving, things keep shifting, and they will change. So
Absolutely.
it's important to have that.
For
But
sure. Yeah. I agree.
but
I agree. Um, I do want to shift the topic a little bit because you
Mhm.
did mention comedy, and I'm quite a big fan of stand-up comedy. So I kind of
Sure.
want to just pick your brain about that a little bit. What uh, what kind of well, I imagine because of your theater background and performing,
Mhm.
that kind of helped uh inspired to go a little bit the comedy route. So,
Mhm.
um, yeah, like how what all right, so what would be the question I'd want to ask? Uh,
No worries.
when it comes to when it comes to comedy, what what do you typically like? What's like your material like? What does it reflect on when you get to do stand up?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't touched it in years. I don't
Okay.
think I've gotten on the stage and done it maybe since I was out living in Chicago. I did like 5 years, like years
Okay.
ago. And it was the kind of thing, so many open mics. And this is why I hand it to people that keep like powering through. So many times you were like, it would be like just you and the other comics in the audience, and you're
Yeah,
performing to
right.
like the tops of everyone's heads. And the nights I crushed were if I could get the comics in the audience to stop working on their sets and pay attention to what I'm saying. Because good comedy, it's just like when you're doing dishes and listening to a TV show. I had a roommate for a little while. She's a big cleaner, Virgo energy. She's like constantly doing dishes and stuff like that. And she's like always like, "Oh, put on whatever you want. I don't care. Whatever you got to do." I was like, "Cool, cool." And it's that whole thing of when someone's working and they catch like a line or a quip from a show, and they would like, oh, and you hear them laughing because you're like,
Yeah,
that's how you know it's funny.
yeah,
Is
yeah.
even if someone's not even paying attention and it just happens to catch their attention, that's a big thing. I mean, one of the things I always got commended on for better or worse is they would tell me that I would bring a lot of good like stage energy. I think it was where my theater background came in. And
Okay.
it was one of those things, shocker, a lot of comedians are kind of depressed, like
I was gonna bring
self-loathing
that up earlier
individuals.
too.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
part of what drew me to it. It's like, oh, good, I hate myself a little bit too. So we'll get up there and we'll talk about it on stage. But a lot of them were like, it didn't matter like the size of the crowd. And I think just to me, I was just like, I'm just gonna work and bring my energy out there. Um,
Mm,
I
that's a
did a
good
lot of
attitude.
like observational comedy. A lot of time, and those are kind of hit or miss.
Yeah.
A lot
Yeah.
of times I would get the laugh making fun of my own material. And that's just kind of
Mm,
that feeling, that vibe of the room, of
the
just kind of understanding.
self-deprecation bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, relieving that tension. And it's hard because a lot of people see the self-deprecation thing as such a negative thing. And I'm
Right.
like, I honestly helps me make peace with my flaws and stuff like that. I'm
Yeah.
not saying we should live there all the time, but don't police my way of having an acceptance of the things that I am self-conscious about. I will
Right.
say I have lines that I like to draw. I always liked working from home more because I knew when I get in an office environment, I was like, I'm just gonna get myself in trouble. I get labeled as the class clown. I'm not gonna pretend like I don't lean into that. But also
Mm,
at the same time, I'm like, I'm a gregarious guy. I'm loud. I'm a distraction. Also the guy that likes to bring in desserts for people's birthdays and do all that stuff too. Um, so, I learned to laugh at myself, but it's also like to remind people, it's like, hey, after a while, that's kind of some stuff I'm self-conscious about, and I have like a good sense of humor, but like after a while, I'm like, kind of need you to stop. Like,
yeah.
because at that same time you get labeled like the clown and the fool and things like that. But I've
Mm,
also just had a lot of weird experiences and run-ins. So for a lot of some of my best stuff, it's just been like true stories, things that have just like happened to
okay.
me. I was even at a McDonald's the other day, and I was doing Lyft. And fun fact about Lyft, you don't have a bathroom easily at your disposal. You pretty much have to use like McDonald's and coffee
Yeah.
shops or wherever. And especially those places like, sir, you got to buy something. I'm like, man, I am working right now.
Right.
And lady, I'm glad you have like an allegiance to this Jimmy John's, but this Jimmy John's does not have an allegiance to you. I'm not gonna go in there and shoot up heroin. Please just let me use your bathroom. But I digress. um behind me there was this woman, and I don't she I got the sense that maybe there might have been some autism or something in there that just may have, just made her a little bit different, some sort of special needs or something in there, just a little bit different. And she was waiting in line while like the lady in front of me like had to go back out and fix something on her phone. She's trying to like pay with her Apple Pay. And here I am in the middle being like, I just really want to pay with my food. And I was like, and I have literally the exact amount of cash right down to the extra dime I needed to get this McDonald's. So I knew this was fate. I knew I was like, I was destined for this, but I just want to get my food and go. And the lady behind me who was kind of like chatting it up with everybody, and you're kind of like, oh, please don't talk to me. She says to the woman at the counter, she's like, I have to ask you, do you have anxiety or joy? And I'm sitting there being like, oh, is this girl selling some MLM or like what? Like, I was like, I don't want to be here for this. I don't want her to talk at me because I'm going to have to humor her because I am that kind of person, at least, blah, blah, blah. But I'm sitting here being like, man, what a like loaded question. And the server, like without batting an eye, was like, we might have joy, but we definitely have anxiety. And it was kind of interesting that she did like the royal we there. So it all of a sudden dawned on me they were talking about the Inside Out Happy Meal toys. And I was just like, but that is the most surreal conversation I have ever been a part of right now. Cause I didn't know they were talking about the Happy Meal toys. And I'm sitting there being like, and I'm sitting there being like, don't answer that question. Don't make a joke because then she's gonna try and so, but she was just looking to get her Happy Meal toy for herself. But even just the way the person answered, I was like, this is the most surreal experience. So, I kind of like to take those opportunities of that's the stuff I like to do. The more I get kind of frustrated with like societal stuff, I tend to get on my like anti-capitalist rants and my need for socialism and stuff. But it's because especially as an artist, I want to live in a perfect world. I
Course.
with an old job, especially in like sales things, I was like, oh, these like individual sales things aren't always as motivating as people think because people get cutthroat, they get defensive, they get protective, whether they're a good person or not. Just some of us, some people even turn into sharks. And when you're around other sharks, like, well, if everyone else is playing dirty, I'm going to start playing dirty because it sucks when you're like being high roaded and that's like hurting you in the long run. And truth be told, it's like still you should be doing as best and honest things as you can. But I get it. Opportunities present themselves, blah, blah, blah. I digress. But it is that kind of thing where I remember saying to my buddy, I was like, it'd be nice if we kind of just had like team goals. And if this gets hit, everybody gets a bonus. And he goes, oh, there's the socialist too. But I was like, but that's the point. That's the reason I want socialism to exist. Everyone sees it as people coasting and taking advantage. But it's like, well, I'm working my butt off and I know I can be a good salesman. And my stuff got churning. Eventually I started, selling the premiums and all that, even though I hate all that crap, but it is still that idea that we could be working as a team to help us all thrive and all succeed. So that way, if one of us is struggling, it's being covered with a lot of this stuff there too. But I digress there. That's way, way, way far removed from a lot of the stand-up stuff there too.
That's
but
fine. That's cool.
it is flattering. A lot of people tell me I should get back up there. And I was like, I do kind of miss it. There is a crazy amount of performance anxiety with being a stand-up comedian. And when you're a stand-up comedian, you are definitively expected to be funny. So if that expectation's not met, it's hard. That's why I kind of like being quote unquote like the funny tarot guy, because it's like, oh, people don't expect you to be funny. So it's disarming. You know what I mean? And it makes it
thing. Right.
Exactly. I was like, when you are the comedian, you have to be the funniest. You have to be the best. You have to be the most talented, especially the more money people pay for it. Especially if it's like an open mic and someone's like, crap, I just wanted to get drinks tonight. Now we got to listen to all this stand-up and stuff. And I did my best when I was at my most comfortable in doing things like this. I can be comfortable with it. I can make people, laughing at your misfortune is about as Black Irish as it gets. That's that good old fashioned dark Irish humor, that lends itself to it. And I still like a lot of the performance. If there's like a themed event, I like dressing up. I like putting on a costume that kind of works with me. I have the color doesn't show off, so I didn't wear it as much, but I have like this green blazer that I wear almost every time. In the warmer seasons, I definitely wear like a short sleeve, like green shirt that I have. But when the situation calls, I like to, because I like that idea that I look like a mortician when I do it. But it's the kind of thing a lot of times I'll wear like Hawaiian shirts underneath, or I wear like jeans. I have kind of these like Day of the Dead Vans that I like to wear, or different things with it. And sometimes if the costume allows me to wear the jacket, plus other things, I'll do it, you know. But I like to think that's a way of tapping into my comedy in a way that I can enjoy, and I always could get back to the stand up on that too. I feel like writing comedy is not easier but more comfortable for me because I
I can
do
see
like
that.
narrative. I like
Yeah.
script. One of my absolute favorite shows of all time is Community, because I
Okay.
love it because it's joke, character, and then it hits you right so hard in the feels. And the original show, especially when it's at its most real, is about people struggling, about people starting over, about people who've made major mistakes on there and learning to kind of bounce back from that. And that's what I like. You know, I one of my previous all-time favorite shows was Cheers. I've done the binge of watching every episode of Cheers, and people really write off the like taped in front of a live studio audience, or even worse, the canned laughter, because the canned laughter can be absolutely atrocious on
Mm.
things. But to me, a really good sitcom will make you feel things at points. I mean, I will cry, and sometimes when I'm at my lowest and struggling, I've kind of like make me cry clips too. You kind of got to do like the emotional gag reflex. You got to get the tears out. You're
Yeah.
bottling it up. You're doing it. And I have many from other sitcoms, but one of them is where oh god, I'm blanking on his name right now. Sam, the main character, Ted Danson's character, he loses his lucky poker chip, and it's what he got from going through AA. So it's like it's a token, it's a symbol
Got
for him, and he needs it. And he always has his slide across the bar where he has that nice little curve that it makes it around to him. And so when he loses the chip, he can't get it done. And there's this whole emotional moment, and I'm tearing up talking about it too, where he's with Shelley Long's character, Diane, who's, telling him like, she knows he's going to have a beer and she's like trying to talk him out of it. She's throwing all these things like, why don't you make fun of me? Like anything she can to get him. But what he does is after he pops it open, he pours the beer and he slides it down to her and he gets it back. So he claims his new lucky, the bottle cap becomes like his new lucky charm. And that's just such like it's a beautiful moment because that was back when they used like real studio audiences, back when sitcoms was just like live theater,
Right.
art that was missed from it too. And people even rag on things like Big Bang Theory, and don't get me wrong, it's very cheap. It's very bad. I kind of talk about it like Subway, where it's like it's not great, but it's consistent and it's stuff
Yeah.
I can watch around my family without getting in too much trouble or anything. Even though I'm like
Right.
in my 30s, pushing 40, and I should be able to just watch adult things. But
You,
I digress there.
you and I
But
both were in that.
yeah, even Big Bang Theory has had some episodes where they kind of go into like the autism that Sheldon's character deals with and things. Because Jim Parsons is a very good actor. It's just
Yeah.
not. It's just it's a Chuck Lorre show. They're very kind of tacky. They have their moments. They have a lot of very kind of insulting, rooting, degrading humor and things along those lines. But even shows like that really have their moments. I mean, that's why I love a lot of those. And so, even horror, I really love a good horror comedy. And I mean something that's truly good horror and then truly good comedy,
Okay.
that
Give me
exists
an
in both
example.
worlds.
I'm not too familiar with that. With horror.
So what's honestly probably Evil Dead might be, and I might say
Oh,
more so
okay.
the first. I might say maybe more so the first or second one, because the third one is very much a good comedy. But even
Yeah.
then, it gets kind of grotesque in a lot of its horror that if certain people like, ooh, visually, that's too much for you.
Yeah.
Even The Exorcist, which is a movie as growing up Catholic outside of DC, was a
Yeah.
movie that just terrified me, especially like, ooh, that happened there. Ooh, that happened over there. That's where they
Yeah.
filmed this stuff too. And it creates kind of that effect in your brain too, creates kind of a psychological response, to these things that it wasn't
Interesting.
until a year or two ago, and it happened to be the 50th anniversary. I watched it that Halloween, the year of the 50th anniversary. And I
Uh-huh.
finally sat down. I was like, okay, you know what? I watch enough horror movie. This movie has scared me enough. I might as well at least just watch it, have a reason to be afraid of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And in all honesty, it still was hard to sit through, but I watched it by myself with my dog during the day because I'm no idiot. I'm not watching that before bed. There's no
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
It's just insane.
I'm the
I need at
same.
least another person. But to some people, that is a hilarious movie. And I have to say, there are things it's like, wow, as fucked up as that movie is, there is a really dark inherent sense of humor throughout
Mm.
all of it. I mean, from the things that kind of come out of her mouth to the stuff that she's doing, to people this is not my MO, even though I've moved away from it, to people that feel the need to kind of troll the church and things like that too.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of morbidity in that there. Abigail's another example, that vampire movie
Yeah.
that came out really recently.
Okay.
My friend who says she doesn't watch horror movies, and she's like, oh, I'll watch a vampire one. I'm watching there being like, this movie qualifies in horror territory. There's been a lot of death. There's been a lot
Yeah.
of violence. Like there's a lot of, it's a great movie. You should watch it. It's actually one of my favorite movies. A lot of the ones that got attention, like Immaculate and things like, yeah, it's called Abigail.
Okay.
So they kidnap like a world famous like child ballet dancer or whatever, thinking like, oh, we're gonna collect all this money.
Oh,
Turns
okay.
out she's not. Yeah, yeah. It's one of
Oh,
those ones where I was like, I almost don't even want to spoil the premise for people,
I
because if
heard
you
I
thought
heard
you were
reviews
watching like
about
a, oh, it's so good.
I
Well, because
heard
if
good
you
things
went in
about
thinking it's a generic movie and then you're like, wait, what the hell is this? It
it. Yeah.
it has such a nice effect to it. But yeah,
I wonder because I'm a big George Romero fan, and
sure.
the original Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead, which Day of the Dead is my favorite like zombie
Oh,
movie.
Day of the Dead's great. That's the military one, right? Where they're locked in,
Yeah,
like they're like in the
and
basement most of the time. Yeah, I love that one.
like those first.
Gorillas sample the opening scene from that, where he's like being like, "Hello, hello, is
Yes,
there anybody
yes,
out there?" I remember watching with my friends and we're like, "That's where it came from."
but after hearing you talk about horror like I feel like Dawn and Day, they kind of almost fit in that category because there's a lot of funny
Oh,
moments
definitely. Oh,
and
Romero had a
especially
sense of humor. I think in the original Dawn of the Dead, there's like a full-on pie fight. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like it's
yeah,
that kind of. And they're
exactly.
all supposed to be commentaries on things. I'm blanking on where like Night of the Living Dead. I don't know if that was just kind of suburbia itself, but Dawn of the Dead is definitely about consumerism, and not to be
Mm,
like that guy, but it
that's fine.
100% it.
Right.
But that's the thing. I feel like good horror, especially if you're doing like a satirical take, has good comedy deep down. Like that's why I loved the Megan movies so much. People are like, oh, this is ridiculous. It's like, it's intentionally funny though. It's
Right.
satire. It's good horror comedy. If anything, I was like, I think it could go farther. That was my biggest complaint about Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Everybody's like, oh, it's real Raimi. I was like, it could have been scarier. I was like, I know that wasn't their total goal, but when everybody's telling me it's classic Raimi, I was like, no, I want it to be kind of scary on some
Yeah.
level. He's dealing with
Yeah.
the magical dark arts. Make it as scary as possible. I would love more
Right.
horror superhero movies.
Yeah, that's the well, yeah, I mean, if we're talking about Marvel in general, like it so I did a previous recording with my college buddy and he was like pointing out was well, I don't know, maybe this is like just opinionated, but he was like saying how, after James Gunn came on board and did Guardians of the Galaxy, he believed that that kind of ruined the sort of the tone of Marvel films. Like everything, like a lot of, if not every Marvel movie after that, a lot of them still had such a strong comedic element to them. And
Yeah.
it's like not come on,
Which
like,
is what's crazy, because he's a gritty horror comedy guy too. He did the
right.
Dawn of the Dead remake, ironically with Zack Snyder. People forget that when they work together, and it is proof
Right.
that it's like, if you give Snyder a better script, he can make some better movies. He just is
Yeah.
struggling to find the right kind of writers, but I
Yeah.
digress. But that's weirdly enough why I'm actually excited to have him come over to DC, because even before he came, I was like, DC keeps being like, we're the grittier one. I was like, then you guys should
Yeah.
be making the hard R movies, make them violent, make them scary. And I know this whole, they want to open it up to like audiences with the PG-13, but I was just like, dads used to, as a rite of passage, take their kids to go see like Terminator and
Yeah.
Aliens and all stuff, because
Right.
it's needed. And because horror is, I feel like, a genre that has just been left in the lurch. Even though it's like on the rise, I don't feel like it's as good as it used to be, because it's missing a lot of the elements.
Yeah.
Nightmare on Elm Street, I feel like they don't really get good until Dream Warriors, and I know a lot of people have different opinions. The first one's fine, but the very original Nightmare on Elm Street, and please don't at me if people get out. It's, in my opinion, it's not that great. Like it's fine, and I know people are like, oh, people try to pull the ageism thing on me, like you're too young, blah blah blah. I was like, well, I mean, Wes Craven had to deal with a lower budget for that, and I think as the budget got bigger and better, it definitely grew. But once they added a lot of dark, sinister humor to it, it really became a better series, and that's why that reboot that happened in the I get what 2005, 2006, whatever. Especially because I like the casting. It's the dude that played Rorschach, in the Watchmen movies.
Yeah.
But my buddy's review, which I need to go see it myself, was he's just like, it's really proof that those movies do struggle without humor in them. That at least the Nightmare ones, especially if you take
Right.
it out, because like that's the whole point. Freddy is punny and tacky and cheesy,
Yeah.
and it's very schlocky, but that's what makes it good. And then on top of that, you have good, violent horror. That's
Mm.
fun to watch. And I think now that Gunn's going to be able to do his own thing, I think it's going to get better, because I still think the first Guardians was cruder than people remember it to be. And
Mm.
I think by the second and beyond, they get a bit cheesier. I liked the third
Yes.
one.
Yeah.
I've some people that are like, oh, I didn't like it, and that's fine, because I think we should be allowed to admit when we don't like an MCU movie. I think we should
Yeah.
start rejecting them a little bit more, so we're not getting the same cookie cutter stuff. Um, they have done some good and some surprising things, but I feel like they are consistently lacking in the horror department. And the things that are kind of horrific are sort of a byproduct of it. The
Right.
whole they disappear into existence during Infinity War is like, oh, cool. And a part of me is kind of like, yeah, but I was like, I know comic book movies and I definitely know the MCU. This isn't
Yeah.
sticking. Everybody's gonna come back, and that's
Of course.
fine. I didn't hate it for the final story. I mean, that all that buildup felt like a good Avenger movie,
Yeah.
but I think DC especially has a chance, because I think probably my only complaint about the Batman, and I love the Robert Pattinson Batman. I thought it was fantastic. I thought it's unique. I thought it's doing its own thing. I thought it's finally nice to see this struggling Bruce Wayne behind everything.
Mhm.
And I'm like, as they're building, they're telling another story. Let it happen. And
Yeah.
it's all these guys that like they want the machismo Batman. They want OP
Okay.
Man, this is even where the Keaton defenders, which I've got myself into some trouble with some folks, because I like Michael Keaton Batman. I just think it's a bit overrated. I just think for what
Yeah,
it did at the time, it
I can
was
see that.
great, but
I would
I think it
also say
started the plot
Christian.
armor. I think it was the definition of plot armor Batman.
Yeah. But like almost the same thing could I feel like same thing with Christian Bale. Like, don't get me wrong, great performance. That trilogy was
hmm
phenomenal. But yeah, and this is just my opinion. I feel like it just was just the hype of it was just a bit much. So I do agree like with the Robert Pattinson Batman, like that one was like a nice sort of refreshing take on it a bit, like
Yeah.
the tonality of the movie, the cinematography and stuff, like that was like, you know, it was like a nice fresh take on it.
Yeah, well, the Zodiac Killer stuff to me was fantastic. Everybody that's like, I understand that's not the Riddler you're looking for. That's
Yeah.
fine. If you'd like a little bit more of like a Jim Carrey or the classic Ed Gorshin and all that stuff too,
Right.
and that's fine. But I personally was like, oh man, because the Zodiac Killer stuff I find utterly fascinating. That's
Mhm.
real life horror that existed. That's a man with no specific kind of cause per
Right.
se, and the funny thing was, people were like, ooh, duct tape man and all that. I was like, but that's how like they literally took images of the Zodiac Killer. Now, there was that level of a lot of people being like, yeah, he's more like Hush than he is like Riddler, but it's also like, but are they building to that? Where does it go? Like, let the mystery and stuff build and play out a little bit more, and we'll get there. But I think
Right.
my biggest thing is I felt like they were trying to make it more like an R rated, like a Silence of the
Right.
Lambs or something that truly is like, look, we're going to show a hard R horror movie. And I think they
Yeah.
had to, and I think because
And
WB gets nervous and they pull punches, and I know they still kind of edited that thing to shit. And I'm still pretty pleased with what we got for the most part. But I would have loved that's one where I'm like, show me this real director's cut. Show me what Reeves really wanted to accomplish here, because I think he's a phenomenal director.
Mm.
Um,
It's
and
just
he's
it's
doing Fincher almost better than Fincher.
I'm
Was
sorry,
that?
I
No, you're
interrupted.
good, good, good. I've been hogging the mic literally, so go ahead.
No, I was just pointing out that it felt grounded too, so it didn't feel like. I
Mhm.
mean, yes, it's a comic book movie, but the elements that it had, it felt realistic. So I I,
Yeah.
I can
Well,
appreciate it.
I think MCU, DC, I think they need to embrace the graphic novel mentality that sometimes it's shared, sometimes it's connected. And honestly, people are smart enough to do whatever homework they want to go piece it
Yeah,
together. I know it's from like a big studio thing, like money, 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 because money talks. But
yeah,
like, I think we should be able to have the courage to do something different, something out of the ordinary, because we would let a comic book writer be like, hey, this is my take, like, take it or leave it. This is what I'm going for. This is what I want to establish. But I love that Gunn is opening it up to like the Elseworld stuff. I do think we're going to see a bit more humor in a good way. And I think we're going to see a lot more of the dark stuff. I mean, a lot of the things he's already investing in, I was like, this is what I'm here for. This is what I like. And I kind of hate that Gunn's been known as the like goofy guy, where I'm like, he has a
yeah.
sense of humor, but his sense of humor is much darker. I mean, when Disney tried to fire him for a bunch of like tweets from like
Oh,
way
dude.
back when, that
Yeah,
was some bullshit, because like you knew that was his style and his branding, and that's why you hired him, and then now you're
right.
kicking him to the curb.
Yeah,
And I think we should have some adult humor in our comic book stuff here, and do
absolutely.
some things. Like, for people that complained about the new Ninja Turtles movie, I freaking loved it, because I was like, those kids are believable teenagers. And anyone's like, they're too young. I was like, nah, dude, we're too old. We're just grown-ups. And that's how
Ah,
teenagers
right.
all
Yeah,
act now. But at the same time, if the more family friendly version pays the bills and keeps the light on, then we might have enough money to be like, all right, let's make a Dark Horse version. Let's do the
right.
original
That would
one
be
that was a
awesome.
satirical take on the grit. But I was like, I want an R-rated Ninja Turtle movie too. I'm here for that.
Yeah, a lot of us
Supposedly, I
too.
think they announced Last Ronin, which I think is going to be the first foray into like, let's get real with this movie,
I
because
gotta read that.
that has the potential to be the best Ninja Turtles movie of all time. So
Yeah, I gotta read that still. I never got it. I never got to read that. And I've seen images of it. And I'm like, I can't get it spoiled. I gotta read what's going on first.
no, for real, for real. No, I feel you. I
And
feel you. I was mad I spoiled which turtle for myself it was, because like sooner or later you're gonna find out,
same.
because that's also what makes the hook. But it's
Yeah.
also like you kind of tell people, going into it, you're like, it's got to be the turtle I think it is, because it's just like, do you at least know? Do you know the
I know
premise of
who it
Last Round? I
is.
won't.
But
Yeah, yeah.
it's kind of hard for me to say whether or not I was surprised. Yeah, I don't know if I was surprised or not. If anything, it's just more heartbreaking have after having discovered who it was because of
Yeah,
them.
well, because you need that. It's kind of like knowing what like Invincible's about too. You're like, you kind of need that catalyst to make that story work in that regard.
Yeah, that is
Otherwise, it's
true.
gonna feel generic. Because a lot of people, because we'll roll this one out for, and hopefully I'm not spoiling anything beyond this for people. When everyone was like, "Oh, it should have been Raphael," I was like, "But we've seen that story a million times.
Yeah,
Raph's whole thing is I want to be alone. So
yeah,
giving him that, it just doesn't carry as much weight. I mean, there's so many
right.
stories, even in the movies we've seen, where Raph is like, I'm going solo and I'm doing and I'm
Yeah,
a Raph guy. Raph is my
same.
absolute favorite turtle, because at my core, I relate to him.
Right.
I'm not as much of a jock as he is, but I definitely have the like, I'm gonna storm out of the room when y'all have pissed me off, and fuck you guys.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gone.
Oh,
Like, yeah, that's
absolutely.
my road rage coming
Yeah,
out.
I always bounce between Raph and Mikey, like
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
yeah.
They're the two classic. I liked Donatello a lot growing up, especially as like a nerdy kid, but I've never felt like as smart as Donatello, and I appreciate him. And Leo, I realize gets, and this is why I kind of like in like the new movie, they kind of give him a hard time. I was like, he's kind of like Cyclops, where
Yeah.
everybody gives him way more shit than he deserves. But it's like he is trying to keep all your guys' shit together too.
Yeah.
Like, I've come
Right.
to like defend and appreciate Cyclops in my old age. I was like, my
Yeah.
only beef with Cyclops is like the Jean Grey stuff. I'm just so over it. I honestly want her to just die and stay dead, respectfully to her.
Right.
But it's just like he is at his worst when he's like, Gene,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know if you watched X-Men 97 at all, but dude, holy crap,
Wait,
that was
have
some
you
good
seen
shit.
it or you haven't seen it?
I've seen it. I've seen it all, man. I
Oh
loved it. Did you
man.
watch it? It's so good. We almost like didn't deserve it. And this was the stuff, because even my buddy is like, he's like, it's proof that Marvel does still have it. And you're like, hell yeah. Because this
Yeah,
is the innovative stuff. And in general, honestly, I'm kind of over most of the live action unless you can pull it off. And I'm kind of like,
same.
animation is getting better all the time. And we could
Yeah.
give a lot more artists a lot more work. Now pay them properly. We don't need to treat them like freaking workhorses,
That's the
but
thing.
like Ninja Turtles and Into the Spider-Verse were truly two, like specifically the second Spider-Verse movie, were two of some of the best superhero movies I've seen in a long time. And
Mm,
it's because they're doing fun, new, innovative things. And you can pay a lot of these bigger celebrities a lot less money, to do this stuff. Because we can all love Robert Downey Jr., but he was siphoning a lot of the funds from those movies because he had the largest freaking salary. And I don't blame him. Dude's been through a lot of shit, and I'd take what I could get
yeah,
too. But you're like, dude, that's after a point, that's just an excessive amount of money. And like,
sure.
Jesus.
Yeah. But yeah, X-Men 97 was a nice when I tell people about it, I'm like, if you watch the original cartoon, I'm like, 97 was made for us. It
Oh,
was
100%. They definitely made it for the adults because I remember watching and talking to
yeah,
guys like, dude, they're wasting no time. And I love it. And they're like, we're going to go hot outside the gate. I like that they're kind of slowly introducing the new mutants too, because you've got
yeah. I
Sunspot.
Sunspot.
I can't remember.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
Sunspot.
yeah.
Sunfire is the Asian. He's Asian.
That was my thinking, and it was so funny because in my head I was like, "Well, it couldn't be Sunfire," but I was like, "Oh yeah, there is a Sunspot and
Yeah.
Sunfire too." Which
I just
that was
hope
another example of MCU screwing it. Is I heard they re-edited and retooled New Mutants to be not so much of a horror movie because that was the whole reason I was hooked on New Mutants. Sorry, I had to jump in with that
no,
one. I
no,
know I
no,
cut
it's
you
fine.
off.
That's actually, yeah, that's a good point because I was excited when when they initially announced New Mutants and that it was supposed to be darker and have those horror vibes to it. So I was like, I'm up for it. I'm really not that big into horror, but like I have my
Yeah,
select, favorites. But yeah, when I heard and when it comes to like Marvel and these, like I've always just called myself like an X-Men fan. Like,
oh hell yeah.
like everything
Well,
else
that
is
was the
just
the big
secondary.
three we grew up with was X-Men, Batman the Animated Series, and all of its offshoots, and
Yeah.
Spider-Man. I think those were the big three that we
Yeah.
grew up with that were the best. There were offshoots, there were spin-offs, there were other
Yeah.
great shows like The Spawn on HBO and all that.
Oh
Although
yeah.
what kid could afford HBO in the 90s? So
Right.
like
But yeah, like so yeah, I was I was I was at first I was excited about, New Mutants and then it kind of
Mhm.
got a little whack.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
man.
And
I
it's
didn't
so funny because like between Sony and Fox, I've wondered how much like involvement Disney has had because I was just like, don't be fooled, man. Disney is the dang mafia. they,
yeah,
they
it
will
is.
they will bully, they will push, they will strong arm until they get it into their fold. And then once it's there, it can do no wrong. But sorry, I'm a
Right.
little weirdly jaded and bitter about certain MC. People like you hate the MC. It's
No,
like,
no, I
I don't
get it.
hate it. I just hate what we allow sometimes from it.
No, 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 I get it. Like I really fell off especially like MCU. I really fell off after hmm. I mean, the last series I felt the last series I watched was Loki season one. Actually no, or was it? I forget. It's either Loki season one or it was She-Hulk that really like cut me off.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, that was one where I'm like, I'm here for it. I couldn't get past it. It was another one that was like too
it
goofy
was
or whatever. And I'm
hard.
like, I'm glad
And
people are enjoying it. And anyone that's like, oh, you just want like a female lead, I was like, first of all, I wanted that Batgirl movie that we never got, that got
right,
scrapped. They won't even just release it. It's been made. I'm like, just put it on a platform or something. Like, good
something.
God.
Put it on Tubi, whatever. Just
Yeah, any one
release
of
it.
them.
Yeah. But
Yeah,
no, yeah,
yeah. I just
I have like yeah, like Marvel, I'm just kind of like whatever about it. I honestly though, the last thing I was very excited about was X-Men 97, and that was it. Like,
oh, absolutely.
yeah.
No, it's huge.
Yeah, it's so
It
good.
was
Like
huge.
I implore the audience tuning in to check that out, especially if you are a 90s kid and you watch X-Men the animated series, watch 97. It's so good.
Yeah, yeah.
So good.
Especially
Uh
because everyone's trying to like throw bullshit woke labels on it, which first of all, X-Men have always been woke. So chill
yeah,
out.
yeah.
But there's all these people trying to be like, people don't like it. I was like, you are lying, my
Well, you
friend.
know what's
And you like,
crazy about
and
it?
it's very progressive too, because the show is exceptionally progressive.
Yeah,
But
what's wild is that I saw on like YouTube like these like sort of like media journalists, I guess you could call them.
Mhm.
They were like pointing out how like they were like it was like review it was reported that X-Men 97 was doing like what had like the worst viewing, like it was being labeled worse than the Marvels and what other title, but they were saying like how poorly it was doing. I'm like, that's
There were
fucking
a lot of those
weird.
weird headline things too that I'm trying to like wonder where that's coming from.
Yeah, because like
And
everyone else is like praising it, so I'm just like, who the fuck is saying that it's the worst
yeah, I
series?
was like, I haven't talked to, but that's also where, Rotten Tomatoes and all that crap, it's all just bullshit, like in my
Yeah,
opinion, in this one. I'm like, just go watch it if you want to. Like, I mean, in all honesty, the only ever reviews I want, and I've even been known to disagree with some folks, is just like my friends to just be like, what did you
yeah.
think? What do you like about it? But I have yet, because we've always had like dissenting opinions or different, and there's normally even like one amongst us who's just like, all right, look, I wasn't really big on it, blah, blah, blah. I think all of my friends like, nope, perfect show. Pretty perfect on there too. And like maybe the cringiest part might be the dialogue at times, but that is still kind of an homage to the classic cartoon. And it's still not that bad because
I was
honestly,
gonna
when
say
it
I
got
didn't think it
serious,
was that bad.
serious.
I
Yeah,
didn't
was
think it
that
was that bad. I didn't think it was the dialogue. I didn't think it was that bad at all, honestly.
there's normally it's like moments which I feel like even when you're watching you can't help but laugh, but you're kind of like, well, that's still how the old series
Oh,
was from time to time.
okay.
But because it hit so hard with like the monologues and the real conversations, it
Mm.
didn't matter. You know what I mean? Like it's and it's gonna have its cliches and things like that too. But no, overall, I mean, it was if anything, it ramped up the original series. They leaned into
Oh, for
all the better
sure.
stuff, the stuff they couldn't
I
talk
mean,
about,
not
the
to
stuff
mention
they
all the
couldn't do.
like it was like bloody too, and that was the thing. I
Oh
was like,
yeah, it was
so much
violent.
blood.
It's dumb. I honestly think where it became an issue for some people was the fact that they made like morph non-binary, which is insane to me. It's so
Yeah,
dumb. Like and I think it literally is. It's ironically I think it's certain bigots and people are trying
right.
to stay. Now, it could also be the fact a lot of us are also broke as fuck, so we're torrenting it. So, maybe that could be where it's coming from
I
too. But if anything should be socialist, I think it should be our TV and our media
right.
consumption. Because I'm like, you spend millions of dollars making it, and you make it so hard for us to watch it. What do you want
Yeah.
from me? Like,
When I
like in the
heard
same way, people like the movie theaters are dying too. I'm like, well, I
um
can't afford to do anything when I get there, so
that is, yeah, I've heard that too, and that's pretty sad, but at the same time, I can see how it's resulting to that. Like, if I could
Mhm.
afford it, I would certainly be out there more, and
Yeah.
but
I'm selective about what I see because I want it because it's got to be stuff that feels like it's an experience. Like
for
I
sure.
love talk, I love some talking movies, some dramas, and all that. But if I don't feel like I need to go see it in theaters, I am just gonna wait for that to hit streaming,
Yeah,
and I'll just watch it when I'm visiting my parents, like most people do on like a
right.
Sunday afternoon.
Yeah,
So
the last movie I saw in theaters was Dune Part Two, just because I know,
sure,
visually, even,
yeah, that was
the
me with Avatar too. I
score.
was like, if I don't see it in theaters, it's not gonna matter to me. So
Yeah, and like, I don't know, if unless I'm going with friends, then I'll be a little more forgiving about what we're seeing, because like, I'm just doing it
sure.
now for the social aspect of it. But like, yeah, if I'm intentionally going to the movies because of a particular film, I'm like, it's because of, the art
Mhm.
of it, like, because another one that I was like, I want to see this in theaters was Godzilla minus one.
Oh, so good. Easily one of
Yeah,
the best things I've seen in theaters in a
dude,
long time in
absolutely.
general. It was so
My wife, who was like, I call her a square, because she's just so she's not like us. She's not a geek,
sure.
you know.
Yeah, I get that.
But
I get that.
that being said, like, she liked it. She liked Godzilla minus one. So I was like, that kind of says something about the movie, because
Absolutely.
I mean, she's not into like big like, sci-fi stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I was like, if she can like genuinely appreciate the film, I'm like, that's a good sign. But yeah, that movie was just so good.
Well, it called our bluff
What's that? Oh
because the
yeah.
running joke is so many Godzilla movies where you're like, I don't want to care about the people. And then you're like, God damn it, they made me care about the people. Like, because it was
Well,
just so heavy.
it's
And it
funny.
was written by the Japanese and you got what the 75th anniversary and all that stuff too.
Yeah,
So there's so much surrounding it that you're just like, hot damn, dude, hot damn.
yeah. It's
But
so funny when we're watching that movie, not to spoil anything for anyone that hasn't seen it, but you know the scene when the guy drops on when like this crazy event happens and the guy gets on his knees and he's like he's like screaming and
oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
so my wife thought that was the end of the movie, you know, like
Ah,
and then
hard. Yeah, I mean, it would be a good moment. It's a strong moment. Yeah,
yeah,
no,
but I was like,
wild.
nah. But yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, no, the
So
premise was solid. Hang on it.
yeah. So um now because my mind suddenly started thinking about tarot again. With this
Yeah,
being-
I was on there too because I was like, look, man, I'll go all day, but how long do you want to? How long do you want these episodes?
uh I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to be better
No,
at
you're good.
the duration of pod because I can go on. Like my
I'm a
last
firm believer. Don't sacrifice time for good content. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, yeah,
make sure if it's good, people want to listen. We make it
for
a
sure.
two-parter episode. It'll feel like a classic X-Men episode to be continued. You know,
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say,
where everybody's shouting "Gene." But,
would this be a good time? Would you still be
sure.
willing to do a reading? I don't know if we want to.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I don't know
And
if
I
we
do
should
have one of my
do.
little handy dandy mats here, so it's got a little thing. So I'll get you some graphics and stuff on the back end, so you know if you want to use it however you want to, so it's legible on there. But that's
Oh yeah,
my flagship, the Irish Wake itself. I figured a nice 3 card would be an easy short one we could kind of do in there too for you.
sure. Yeah, I don't know if we should do because you said before we started recording if we should do like like a personal one or like a more general one. I guess like a general.
Yeah, we can make it literally for your audiences. I mean, when I listen to ones on YouTube, it's kind of like people kind of check on their horoscopes and things like that, where it's,
Okay.
you know, if it feels applicable to you or there's insight to be gained, your audience can kind of interpret it how they see fit. If you want to do about you, you mentioned your wife. If you want to have one, you know, for your wife, you're on the podcast, we can do that too. But whatever you're feeling, my friend, whatever makes
Let's
the most sense to you.
let's do like a yeah, let's do a general audience one. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, just so for whoever is tuning in, perhaps they can uh take something from this experience as well.
Sure, sure. I like that.
Cool.
Cool, cool. All right, we'll start with my nerdy little dad joke I always like to tell with these things. So my running joke is, do you know what tarot decks and Nintendo have in common?
Shit.
It's okay if you don't remember the answer.
I don't know.
Gotta blow on it to make it work.
Fuck! I
So, getting
was
all
gonna
the
say
old
that.
energies off of there. Yeah. We're getting all the old energies
Uh,
off of these here too. Awesome, awesome, cool. We get a little shuffle going. And kind of like I was explaining earlier, you know, my name is Sawyer, and this is called Irish Wake Tarot. And so I've literally developed my Irish Wake 3 card spread here too. So the first card is what we're bearing. That can be what we're releasing, what we're letting go of, what we're kind of working through on that end. Or could be planting seeds for the future. So, you know, this is a little open to interpretation, how we see fit here. And then the second card at an Irish funeral, that bartender's going to ask you, what's your poison? And as we know, that's a little bit of a bittersweet question there. So we're going to examine both the good sides and the bad sides of the card. What feels a little medicinal in some respects. But as we know, like a good drink or even too much medicine on there, if we do too much, it can be a little toxic for us, a little unhealthy. So we're going to examine both of those ways that kind of serve and fit us. And then like any good Irish wake here, we're going to ask what we're toasting and what we're celebrating, how we're give us something to look towards in the future. That can be keeping a small piece of this proverbial person's memory. Or it could be the idea of being like, hey, you know what? I'm glad they're dead. I don't need them anymore. Spit on their grave and let's move on without them. That's all depends on how it goes. But like I said, a big thing of what I like to do is focusing on the releasing, the letting go, the stuff that's going to be create a bit more of a healthy atmosphere for ourselves, because as much as we want to hold on to things in our lives, we know at the end of the day it's not always good to do that. Like I said myself, if I had held on to the things I had before, I might have still been miserable doing a crappy 9 to 5 and things, chasing after stuff that's not good for me or just not right for me, and being miserable and arguably alone. And while my money's not doing as good as it used to be, the idea is at least I've found an art that I can share and kind of enjoy here and move forward here. All right, cool. So I've got these now. I'm basically going to do this the way I kind of do my own typical readings. Typically, I let an individual make a choice of which pile they want and where they want to pick and choose from there too. But I'm going to do kind of the same way that I do for myself, where I've dealt out all the cards, and I'm literally just going to draw these top cards at each one here. So the very first one that has what we're burying here. Oh, it's so funny. We were talking about this one earlier, the Page of Swords. So when you yourself were kind of asking a question, hey, I'm going to be honest with you, Sawyer, I don't know what that means. And the funny thing is that'll happen a lot with the tarot. I don't know what that term means. I don't know what that suit means. I don't know what that number represents, or these things. And that's where we have to ask these kinds of good questions for ourselves, because the page is already a student of sorts. They have things to learn. It's kind of higher education though, like a college atmosphere, or getting like a promotion at job, or leveling up in a relationship and things, but recognizing there's still things to understand. And so one of the best ways we can learn is by asking questions, by creating that level of communication. That's going to facilitate these little light bulbs that we got over here, which are kind of like ideas, epiphanies, breakthroughs, opportunities, and a lot of things in there. So that Page of Swords, I think a big part of that is taking those things that we have learned, those skills that we have developed, and being able to shape them further. Because do you happen to know, G, what the sword and the mind have in common? It's kind of punny. You want to keep them both?
Sharp.
Bingo. I knew you'd get there. And that's exactly the point. That's why.
Sharp.
There we go. You got it. Because think about it. A dull blade and a dull mind aren't going to be very useful to us. We can't cut anything with that. We can't do that. And that's what the sword does. It decides what's to cut out, what's not working for us, what's not serving with us. But at the same time, we can also use the sort of different way. We can protect the things that we hold near and dear. So this can sometimes be about changing perspective, cutting out negative thoughts, fears, worries, and anxieties, and developing these things a little bit further. So I'd say, depending on how people want to interpret it from their own personal standpoint, the bearing can either be one, this feeling like a student, that maybe it's time that we level up ourselves a little beyond that, so we ask those right questions, we create those levels of communication to get the information we need to level up, because then we move on to a knight, who's someone that takes action, that moves forward and knows what they want. And especially the knight in the swords is a quick thinker on there too. The alternative could be kind of that fool energy we were talking about at the beginning of the podcast there. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. Just like tempering steel to make a sword itself, that first blade's probably not going to be best. I used to work in one of those living history things, making the nails, and a lot of times I had to screw up the nails a few times before I'm like, you know what, this is what works for me. This is what serves us, because that's going to help us grow and develop from there. So I like to always grab the affirmations. By the way, for anyone playing along at home, this is my light seared deck. If you want to pick them up, you can order them pretty much anywhere online. But this deck maker makes some of my favorite decks and things out there too. Very neutral, very positive, very healing. The breakthrough is great because they definitely examine a lot of the light side and the shadow side of these things. So definitely one I recommend if you want to kind of get a good starter deck. Like I mentioned earlier, technically you're supposed to have your first deck given to you, of course. I break the rules all the time, so do whatever you want. But if you're thinking about getting that as a gift for someone, it's a great way for people to kind of get started in the tarot scene. And it says here, I learn and I expand my consciousness and open up new opportunities for my life. And I think that's great, because that's the whole point of education and training, is being able to create these possibilities, come up with these new ideas, create serendipity for these things to also find us. And I think that's also that wisdom we seeking us, like we were talking about earlier.
Right.
All right, so let's move on to what's your poison here. And this is our second card. And this is again kind of our bittersweet card. And this is one that I kind of like because, especially if we're starting with the Page of Swords, if we kind of need this opportunity or this beginning, this is our Ace of Wands. And that's kind of a one in the tarot suit there. So it's new beginnings, new opportunities, new perspectives, new resources, things that can come along those lines. G, if you had to guess, what do you think the wand suit might represent? Throw anything out there that comes to mind. No wrong answers.
The wand. Um,
Yeah, and it could be based on what you're seeing here in this image, or just something that kind of you associate in your brain with the wands.
you're saying wand, like a wand?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. I
WANDS. And I
mean,
think you've already got an answer in your mind if you're going to that mindset. I think you've already got an
yeah, I just
answer.
feel like that's, the wand is the thing you use to my mind is starting to blank. The wand is the thing you use to make something come to life, or like to
Yeah,
bring something to fruition. Or
absolutely.
I can't think of any
That's a
better
really
way
good
to
answer
describe.
because honestly, I associate the wands with manifestations,
That's it.
or even
Yeah.
if it's simplest term, magic. You know what I mean? And you can always go with the classic M word because that is magic. That's what wands are used. That's Gandalf's staff. That's Harry Potter's literal wand. That's
Yeah.
the tool, the resource that you generate, and that's a big one for us as artists too because it's a lot of fire energy where it comes with its trials and its tribulations, but sometimes we have to use that intense heat to temper, to create, to allow things to exist or come into manifestation, to become real for us. And I also like to associate that with the soul, the libido, a lot of things in there. And it can also be an impulsive energy, which if we're kind of looking at kind of the more bitter side of the bittersweetness, being impulsive, being a little too crazy, jumping to conclusions, making too quick a move on there can hurt us in the long run. But if we suss out the right opportunities and through those trial and errors, we can guide our intuition of, what, this makes sense. Or, what, I've dealt with this problem before. I know how to grow. I know how to see these things happen too. Because if you notice, there's a lot going on there too. I love that the flame exists right on the person's forehead. So I'd like to think it's where that inspiration starts. It's that spark, the tinder that helps the flame build and grow and develop on there too. And so while the bitter side might be that it's going to be challenging, people might make fun of us, especially if we're kind of talking in regards to the Page of Swords and things there. We might make mistakes, we could screw up, critics could give us bad reviews, blah, blah, blah. It's working through those trials and those things that help shape our art because, like we talked about earlier, pain can be a big part of that catalyst. Again, if I didn't have my heart broken or have that job kick me to the curb and all those problems, then one, I took a hard look at myself. Where can I improve and where can I grow? Where can I develop? And not to say, I didn't entirely deserve to not be let go from those things, but I also have to recognize that I can build better. I can construct better for myself. And maybe that environment will be better off without me in a better capacity. They have the freedom to do their things and I have the freedom to do my things. And that heartbreak can really shape the way that I listen and engage with people and grow and develop these things in a very happy, healthy way. So, the fire energy itself is about as bittersweet as it gets. It's dangerous, it's challenging, it's overwhelming, it's concerning, but we can really build that flame up. We can help it thrive, we can help it grow, and who knows what powerful works that we could create out of it. All right, so the affirmation for this one with our bittersweet card is I seed my brilliant future with the roots of creativity and inspiration. I seed my brilliant future with the roots of creativity and inspiration. Creativity and inspiration are truly what fuel that flame. That's that oxygen. That's that material that burns that's needed for the flame to develop and grow and thrive. And I think the hard part is, as we know, like with any seed, it takes time. It takes a little dedication, a little TLC to help that grow. So we got to be patient with it. But kind of that double dutch mindset. If it feels right, I'm jumping in. Let's hop in. Let's make it happen. Or improv or things like that. Those wild, crazy, weird, confusing energies. We can take that chaos and harness it in a powerful and meaningful way for ourselves.
Mm.
All right, cool. How you feeling so far, G? How you feeling
Right.
with me?
Yeah,
Good, good.
these
Any
are
questions
resin.
or anything with these first two cards?
What's that?
Any questions with the first two cards at all?
No, things are hitting the mark for me so far.
Good, good. All right, cool. And we're ending on what's called Major Arcana. That's a big VIP in the tarot world. Major
Oh.
mojo, a little extra magic. Maybe be a bigger part of our destiny, the things we've built, successes, things along those lines. But I like to think this is really where that placebo effect at minimum can come in. We're like, that makes me feel good. I like that. That's big energy. Or in all honest, literal sense, that's where the magic is really happening. That's where the good stuff is really manifesting and creating for us. And we have the Empress card right here too. And I'll hold it back. I don't know if it's a little too telling in what it is for social media and things, but hopefully that should be fine on there too.
Mhm,
But if you notice, there's like a world, right? There's a globe right where her womb is. And
mhm,
this is the Empress too. This is the divine feminine and all its power and glory there too. Because that's the big thing that women can do that we can't. Now, these energies aren't specifically tied to a gender, but I'd like to think there are core principles with that too, that the divine feminine, it's that creation energy, especially
mhm,
as artists. We're learning and understanding and making mistakes, and then we have the boldness and the courage and the flame and the spark to get our projects going. This is what we're toasting. This is what we're celebrating moving forward. So if it is an artist endeavor, it's that idea of our projects coming to fruition. And I like to call the Empress card the Beyonce card because she's sexy, she's powerful, she's smart, she's skilled, she has it all, and that's what we want. And one of my favorite movies is The Fisher King, and it's a movie that's been very personal to me in a lot of ways, and defined a lot of my art and things, and especially my tarot in some big ways there. There's a character with Jeff Bridges is kind of like love interest or partner, if you will, who talks about how she thinks God's a woman and the devil's a man. And it's because, the woman, it's a creator, it's giving life, it's a nurturer, it's a caretaker and things. And the devil is kind of that more masculine energy where it can be kind of like sexy and alluring, problematic, but strong, a lot of things tied up into it. So she talks about kind of like, it's all the God and the devil is just kind of working their shit out sexually, between each other, or however you kind of want to look at it in that regards here. Um, but that's where I think that Empress is kind of like like the divine being themselves. I think there's a lot of merit to seeing it as a female figure, like Gaia, a creation, an earth-like energy. And we as artists especially want to thrive and do that. We want it to succeed, we want it to grow, we want it to develop. And I think we have to have that balance of nurturing while working through the pains that a labor requires. It's difficult, it's physically demanding, it's exhausting. We may have other conditions and things that we're working through. But do you know what separates both an empress and an emperor from kings and queens? Do you know what the big difference is? Take a guess.
hmm.
There is something out there. What would make you think a big difference there between them?
Honestly, the first, I don't know why, but the first word
Sure.
that comes to mind is power.
Yeah, a power is a big part of it. And I'm going to take that one step further because I think there's something with that power that comes with growth and development. Empire's got to expand, right? That's
Yeah.
the whole thing. It's like kingdoms, it's mostly about kind of functioning as they are. But once you become an emperor or an empress, you're expanding that empire. You're getting outside of your comfort zone. You're taking even bigger risks for even bigger rewards. Now, don't get me wrong, there can be a certain amount of fascism and things that come with that. So,
Yeah.
no need to feel too in demand of those things. But that's that idea, especially we as artists, when we found a foundation that worked for ourselves, like for example, you take me doing gigs at the Poe Museum or certain easy gigs like that, or markets or things like that. It's like I've done well, but let's see where I can build my empire further. Where can I get more stability? How can I branch out to more parties and things? How can I, develop a social media reach for myself? Where can I thrive? Where can I exist that I'm truly giving birth to bigger and more powerful things?
Mhm.
And that's that Empress energy. And it says right here too, I am ready to give birth to my abundantly rich future. And I feel like in a way that really sums up a lot of things that we're talking about, where I've wanted to talk about our empires growing and thriving in a lot of ways there too. And even you mentioned your wife about, trying to find a job, trying to make these things work. Even myself, heavy on the job hunt, whether it's feeding my tarot art or making sure I've got my bills paid and covered with just a 9 to 5 that supplements it. But it's being ready and willing to accept that abundantly rich future that's ahead of us. And I could sit here and tell someone, oh, this Empress is a good sign. Great things are going to happen. Don't worry about it. I can't guarantee that for everybody. But instead, if I take that mindset of, look, I've got some things I've got to learn and grow, develop. I've got to admit that I've leveled up a little bit, but I've got a little ways to go to thrive and have that succeed further. But I can survive through the trials and tribulations and feed that flame and help that spark grow and develop and bigger things to finally celebrating and toasting this powerful victory at the end of my journey there too. And so I could sit here and say, do we predict the future? Is it going to come true? Is it not? Who's to say until things play out the way that they do? But it's more important that it's accepting the things that have made me who I am, my limitations and my resources, taking all of that and working my butt off, working through my fears, making bold moves, bold changes. And then maybe I could feel like that Beyonce at the end of the road. And that'd be nice. And that could be the vision. That can be our North Star that guides us. And if that's a placebo effect that makes us feel better about the work we're doing or the time and results we've got, and we get there, cool. Maybe that's its own magic. Or maybe on a greater level, the magic does happen and work. And who's to say they're mutually exclusive from each other?
Damn.
How you feeling?
Deep. No, this was
I try to go deep with it all too. And as I've said often here too, it's a little upside down. I don't know if we could do it or show it, but my tattoo says Slancha. I always like to. That's my big sign off because just like any other toast or cheers, it always means to health. And so if we don't have our health, what do we have? So at least we've got that for ourselves.
I wholeheartedly agree with that, my friend. Absolutely. Beautifully done. That was awesome, dude. I love it. And
Well, thank you.
obviously I can only speak on my behalf, but so many things in that reading resonated with me. And I hope I hope the audience can certainly grab something from this. Like hopefully it resonated with them as well, with their own struggles and their own journeys and things that they're trying to accomplish in their own lives. We're all trying to strive for the same thing, right? So
Absolutely.
this was yeah, I'll say this was another beautiful experience, and I truly appreciate you um offering that, especially on this podcast as well. So thank you, man.
Yeah,
Appreciate
I mean, I love doing it. I often, whenever I can get some money for it, that's normally the goal. Not that I'm fishing for it here, but I do. People are like, oh, you sure you want to do it for free? I was like, no, I like to give back. I like to show people that haven't experienced it what it's like. And if I can do a shameless plug in there too, I will say I do.
No,
My
plug
three
away.
cards start at cool. My three cards do start at $10 for digital readings. So if you want something like this, we can handle that through text on there. We can do WhatsApp if you prefer to use like a mass number or things like that. I can also do through Instagram, or we can text directly wherever is convenient from you. It pretty much goes up for the digital readings, $5 per card after that. I will say you get a nice discount if you do any of my Zoom readings because most of those are at $30. And that's we can get on what we're kind of doing right here, just like a podcast. So I can hold up the cards and I'll send you a nice little picture with some cheat sheets. You get a copy of the video. So that's starting at $30. That's a pretty good value there. Most of my on-sites do start at $100. I do group rates on there. So if it is the kind of thing that you're having a bunch of people over for a party, things like that, we can have it so that we guys kind of get some nice value started in there. And then probably my bigger tier item is my Hero's Journey spread. I was kind of like talking about a little bit earlier. It is a 12 card, so it can take around an hour to do. I can also send those digitally through email and things like that. So if you don't want to engage at all and treat it like a greeting card, I do have that option available for folks. But my Hero's Journey does start at $50 for a digital reading on there. $75 would be for a Zoom one. And that's also going to be $100 on site for that as well. But really great birthday gifts for people, especially for like a really special occasion. Adds a lot of narrative to your life. It kind of shows like where your world's at, your call to action, your refusal on there, where you can find some mentorship, resources, allies. Going to show you what things might be holding you back and what things can propel you forward, and adds a nice little narrative to your life. And beyond that, I got a few other things coming up. I think next week I'm going to be over at River City Roll. If you guys do follow me at Irish_Wake_Tarot on Instagram, you can always see what events and things I'm hitting up. But I know I'm going to be doing First Fridays in July with the RVA Moon Market. I've got the Sunflower Market on the 23rd, I think it is. I got to keep all my dates straight. That one's a really close one to me because I have my sunflower tattoo as a tribute to my grandmother. She passed away last October, actually during a
Um,
bustling season. Yeah, it's okay. She lived to be 100 and she was
um,
very much ready to go to the other side. And she was the sun card through and through. I always think of her whenever I draw my sun card. But it's my nice little kind of tribute to her. It's a market, they called it the Sunflower Market. It's the month of her birthday, a week before her actual birthday, where she would have been 101. So, follow me for all those events and things on there too. Or you can catch me at most of the unhappy hours at the Poe Museum last Thursday of every month at Poe, 6 to 9. It's a miserable time. And last but not least, I am available, like I mentioned, for weddings, birthday parties, markets, any events, even just a nice little birthday gift. You want to do like an on-site thing, I can kind of work with you on some pricing and things there. But you can again contact me at Irish_Wake_Tarot or IrishWakeTarot@gmail.com. And I'll give G a lot of my contact information, whatever we want to share on there too. But if you guys follow me, hit me up. I would love to do some business reading. And I will note, if you are absolutely struggling and you cannot afford a reading, but you feel like you could really use one, I do some pro bono ones out there just to help people kind of get their mojo back there. Because I'm a firm believer in what I call therapy, which is that therapy tarot work there. So
I love
I'm here for the
that.
puns here.
That's awesome.
But as we say,
I love
I'm dying to
puns.
work your next event. So
That's awesome. I might have to use that as the title of this episode, therapy. That's
yeah, hey,
awesome.
please, art therapy. But like I always joke, I'm tarot with a morbid sense of humor, and I'm dying to work your next event. So just let me know.
That's amazing. Yes, please, everyone tuning in, follow him on Instagram as he said. Links. I'll make sure the links is provided in the show description as well. And yeah, lots of options there for you. And yeah, man, this was awesome. I'm so glad that we made we made time to do this. So as always, I really appreciate your time, and you know I look forward to seeing you out there as well. So
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure, my man.
awesome. Well, to put a ribbon on this, I would like to share a quote. This is what we usually like to do on the podcast, is share a meaningful quote. Now, this one is wordy, but I don't know, just at the time when I was reading it, um, it resonated with me personally. So
Mhm.
hopefully this is something that can resonate with you, Sawyer, and for everybody else. This is a quote by Anthony DeMello. If you're not familiar with who he is, I've quoted him multiple times on the podcast. He's an Indian Jesuit priest and psychotherapist. He's known for doing, these spiritual conferences and stuff like that. He's got a book called Awareness, which is a book that I listen to on audio. Um and yeah, and the quote here is, happiness is our natural state. Happiness is the natural state of little children to whom the kingdom belongs until they have been polluted and contaminated by the stupidity of society and culture. To acquire happiness, you don't have to do anything because happiness cannot be acquired. Does anybody know why? Because we have it already. How can you acquire what you already have? Then why don't you experience it? Because you've got to drop something. You've got to drop illusions. You don't have to add anything in order to be happy. You've got to drop something. Life is easy. Life is delightful. It's only hard on your illusions, your ambitions, your greed, your cravings. Do you know where these things come from? From having identified with all kinds of labels.
Wow. I do enjoy that. That's very powerful. There's a lot of tarot stuff I could talk all day about in there too, but it is It is funny. That is a lot of that sun energy we were kind of talking about, where it's
Yeah.
vibrant, it's exciting, and it's in us, and it's natural. And then there's a lot of that devil energy that kind of corrupts it. And so, and then even the
Mhm.
principle, kind of like we're talking about, like the sword suit. A lot of times you have to like cut things out. You've got to remove that
Yes.
stuff because it's. I like that. It's beautifully. It's within us. We just have to remove the toxins that violate that. And I think that's beautiful.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad I picked a good one because sometimes I kind of premeditate and be like, oh, this might be a good fitting, even if I don't know the
Mhm.
direction of the conversation. But sometimes I'll pick them like prior to or thinking like this could resonate. But this one was like, I don't know, but this is kind of, I was just kind of going off my own instinct. And yeah, I mean, yeah, just sort of reflecting on the moment of everything we spoke about. This definitely felt like, you know, this like also um, contributes to everything we spoke about on this podcast. Um,
Definitely. We call those synchronicities in the tarot world, at least in
there
like the
you go.
hippie woo woo side of stuff, where it's they connect, they line up, and there's I think a lot of synchronicities throughout there and through the conversation itself too.
Hell yeah. Well, with all of that said, everyone who has joined us on this podcast, I appreciate you. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Please do all the necessary things wherever you are tuning in from to help out with the growth of the podcast. And of course, be sure to follow my friend on the social media, support him, join him on his journey. Um, and with all of that, please stay safe, stay healthy, and stay driven. And we shall catch you on the next one. Peace out, everybody.